Ah, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Burr, sir.
And did you hear the news about good old General Mercer?
No.
You know Claremont Street?
Yeah.
They renamed it after him. The Mercer legacy is secure.
Sure.
And all he had to do was die.
Yeah, that's a lot less work.
We ought to give it a try. Now how you gonna get your debt plan through?
I guess I'm gonna finally have to listen to you.
Really?
Talk less, smile more. Do whatever it takes to get my plan on the Congress floor.
Now Madison and Jefferson are merciless.
Well, hate the sin, love the sinner.
Hamilton.
I'm sorry, Burr, I gotta go.
But
decisions are happening over dinner.
two Virginians and an immigrant walk into a room diametrically opposed foes. They emerge with a compromise, having opened doors that were previously closed. Bros. The immigrant emerges with unprecedented financial power, a system he can shape however he wants. The Virginians emerge with the nation's capital. And here's the pièce de résistance. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one really knows how the game is played, the art of the trade, how the sausage gets made. We just assume that it happens, but no one else is in the room where it happens. Thomas claims
Alexander was on Washington's doorstep one day in distress and disarray.
Thomas claims
Alexander said,
I've nowhere else to turn,
and basically begged me to join the fray.
Thomas claims
I approached Madison and said, I know you hate him, but let's hear what he has to say.
Thomas claims
Well, I arranged the meeting. I arranged the menu, the venue, the seating.
But no one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one really knows how the parties get to yes, the pieces that are sacrificed in every game of chess. We just assume that it happens, but no one else is in the room where it happens. Meanwhile, Madison is grappling with the fact that not every issue can be settled by committee. Meanwhile, Congress is fighting over where to put the capital. It isn't pretty. Then Jefferson approaches with the dinner and invite, and Madison responds with Virginian insight.
Maybe we can solve one problem with another and win a victory for the Southerners. In other words, a quid pro quo.
I suppose.
Wouldn't you like to work a little closer to home?
Actually, I would.
Well, I propose the Potomac.
And you'll provide him his votes.
Well, we'll see how it goes.
Let's go.
No.
What else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened.
My God, in God we trust,
but we never really know what got discussed. Click, boom, and it happened.
and no one else is in the room where it happened.
Alexander Hamilton.
What did they say to you to get you to sail New York City down the river?
Alexander Hamilton.
Did Washington know about the dinner? Was there presidential pressure to deliver?
Alexander Hamilton.
Or did you know even then it doesn't matter where you put the U.S. Capitol?
Cause we'll have the banks, we're in the same spot.
You got more than you gave.
And I wanted what I got. When you got skin in the game, you stay in the game. But you don't get a win unless you play in the game. Oh, you get love for it, you get hate for it, you get nothing if you wait for it, wait for it, wait. God help and forgive me, I wanna build something that's gonna outlive me. What do you want, Bert? What do you want, Bert? If you stand for nothing, Bert, what do you fall for?
I wanna be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens. I wanna be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens. I wanna be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens. I wanna be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens. Close your eyes.
They want our leaders to save the day.
We don't get a say in what they trade away.
We dream of a brand new start,
but we dream in the dark for the most part. Dark as a tomb where it happens. I've got to be in the room. I've got to be where it happens.
You timed that perfectly. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Freethought Society's October meetup with Andrew Seidel as our speaker. My name is Michael Stephen Martin, and it is my pleasure to be the Zoom coordinator for the Freethought Society and your co-host for today's event. I hope those of you that logged on early enjoyed the music we provided, excuse me, during the pre-event social. We played 4 songs from the play Hamilton on request of our speaker, Andrew Seidel. Those of you that logged on heard the songs. These may be in different order. The Story of Tonight, The Room Where It Happened, which I believe just played, The Election of 1800, and The Schuyler Sisters. The song set the stage for what Andrew will be talking about today, why Christian nationalism is un-American. We want to stay on target with our timing, so I'm officially starting the session by spotlighting my co-host and the president of the Freethought Society, Margaret Downey.
Well, and thank you, Michael. Welcome to the room where it's happening. Welcome everyone to the Freethought Society's October 10th Zoom meeting. The Freethought Society serves as an online forum in which freethinkers can virtually meet, socialize, and exchange ideas. As freethinkers, our minds are not restrained by superstitions or prescribed dogmas that tell us what we can and cannot think. While some today would suppress independent thinking, freethinkers know that the unrestrained exchange of ideas have been the primary forces of progress in all civilizations. As freethinkers, we want to better ourselves and our community through the unrestrained application of reason and human endeavor to address the local and global problems that confront us. Now, on the screen, you will see a list of Freethought Society volunteer opportunities, and we hope that one of our committees will be of great interest to you. We would welcome your participation. The Freethought Society is a nonprofit 501c3 educational organization, and this is why we hope you will be moved to make a donation today. A donation link will appear in the chat section a few times during this event, but if you miss the link, it's very simple. Well, I was going to change the slide. Here you go. It's very simple. It is ftsociety.org/donate. When we hosted live events before COVID-19 occurred, we passed around a kitty and people would drop in $5, which was very helpful. And now that we're on Zoom, we hope some of you will be moved to donate a few dollars via PayPal at the address that you will see on the screen. And now to introduce today's speaker, Andrew Seidel, is Freethought Society board member, Marjorie Goldman.
Thank you, Margaret. I'm very happy to introduce this speaker, and I am really looking forward to his talk. Andrew Seidel is a constitutional and civil rights attorney, activist, atheist, and author. He is the director of strategic response at the Freedom from Religion Foundation. At the foundation, Andrew works to ensure that the government upholds the First Amendment and that Jefferson's wall of separation between state and church remains tall and impregnable. His first book, which he will be talking about today, The Founding Myth, Why Christian Nationalism is Un-American, hit shelves in May and was burned by a Tennessee pastor, so you know he must be doing something right. The renowned constitutional scholar Erwin Chemerinsky described it as a beautifully written book that explodes a frequently expressed myth that the United States was created as a Christian nation. When not fighting for the First Amendment and free thinkers' rights, Andrew travels around the country discussing atheism, state church separation, constitutional law, and other issues affecting the secular community. He also writes for Freethought Now, Slate, ThinkProgress, Religion News Service, Rewire News, and elsewhere. And you can follow Andrew on social media at Andrew Seidel. Fun fact about Andrew. Before dedicating his life and law degree to helping atheists assert their rights and keeping church and state separate, Andrew was a Grand Canyon tour guide and accomplished nature photographer. Here's a glimpse of his work. No attention to that phone ringing in the background. Looks pretty good to me. Let me come back to us here. I don't know about anybody else, but if we ever start traveling again, I would love it if Andrew would get together a group of free thinkers and guide us through the Grand Canyon. Maybe that can be an option in conjunction with the CSI conference, which is typically held in Las Vegas. It would provide a good break from the overstimulation of the Vegas environment. I would sign up in a heartbeat. But first, we have to get the country healthy again in more ways than one. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. And now I am pleased to turn the program over to Andrew. Andrew, take it away.
Well, thank you for that very kind introduction, Marjorie. I really appreciate it. Truly kind. And yeah, I'm sorry that I can't be there in person with you, but welcome into my home. It is a pleasure to have you. You all are currently sitting on the desk where I wrote the founding myth. And I'm excited to have this chat. In a way, it's a little bit more of an intimate setting. And I promise I'm going to leave plenty of time for Q&A because I know a lot of people are concerned about everything that is happening right now. And I would love to talk about all your questions. So,
Andrew, very quickly before you start, this is Michael, the host. Is there a way to increase your volume on your microphone?
No, you guys are gonna have to do it on your end or turn it up. I'm at max, I think, here.
Okay. You sound clear. It was just a little low, but yeah, everybody, if you need to turn the volume up.
Here, I'll move it closer to my. Is that better?
Yes.
I get closer. Okay.
Thank you so much.
I tend to move and wave when I talk, so I may go away from time to time, but I'll come back. I promise. Okay. So, do we have a government of the people, for the people, and by the people, or is ours a government of the Christians, for the Christians, and by the Christians? That is our battle right now. Right now, America is in a desperate fight against Christian nationalism, a political theology that is, as you can see, an existential threat to our republic. That is why I wrote the founding myth. Now, Christian nationalism is often treated as though it's just this scholarly debate. It's not. It is a sinister, exclusionary movement. The goal is to redefine America according to the Christian nationalist identity, and then to reshape the law accordingly. So Christian nationalism is the idea that we were founded as a Christian nation, that we were built on Judeo-Christian principles. And most importantly, that we've strayed from that foundation, that we've gotten away from our godly roots. And they use the language of return to justify all manner of hateful public policy, evil public policy, we might even say. And Christian nationalism seized power in 2016 in a way that we had not seen in a very long time in this country, if ever. The best predictor of a 2016 Trump voter was thinking that the United States was founded as a Christian nation. Trump tapped into this fearful undercurrent of Christian nationalism and wrote it into the most powerful office in the history of the world. And now his administration is and has been implementing Christian nationalist public policy. If you remember the Muslim ban, which seems like 2 decades ago, that was Christian nationalist public policy. The child separation policy at the border, absolutely Christian nationalist. They justified that. Jeff Sessions justified that by pointing to the Bible, by pointing to Romans 13. He learned to do that in the White House Bible study. The opposition to LGBTQ equality is almost exclusively Christian nationalist. And with this most recent appointment to the Supreme Court, which we're fighting and everybody should be calling their senators about, LGBTQ marriage equality hangs in the balance. So does the reproductive justice, and the opposition to reproductive rights is almost exclusively Christian nationalist. The good news, real good news, actual good news, not the Christian version of good news, is that the very identity of the Christian nationalist depends on certain lies and myths. A common well of lies and myths that you have heard repeated over and over again, and that you will hear more of in the coming weeks. Things like one nation under God. Things like in God we trust. Like the idea that the Declaration of Independence references the Christian God 4 different times. The idea that all the founding fathers were evangelical Christians, that they prayed at the Constitutional Convention, that George Washington knelt in the snow at Valley Forge and said a prayer, that our laws are based on the 10 Commandments. Without the historical cover that these lies give, their policy justifications crumble. Without that common well of myths, their identity, their entire identity, begins to wither and fade. Put another way, their entire political and ideological reality is incredibly weak and vulnerable because it's based on historical distortions and lies. Unfortunately, we need more than facts to fight back. We need better arguments, and that really is the purpose of the founding myth. I set out to bury Christian nationalism. It's a simple, if a lofty goal. I wanted to utterly destroy this un-American political ideology. So the book is not simply a refutation of the idea that we're a Christian nation. Instead, I went deeper. I asked a different question. I asked, did Judeo-Christian principles positively influence the founding of the United States? And the answer to that is no, they didn't. America was not founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and it's a good thing, because Judeo-Christian principles, whatever they may be, and especially those that are central to the Christian nationalist identity, are thoroughly opposed to the principles on which the United States was built. The two systems differ and conflict to such a degree that, to put it bluntly, we can say Christianity is un-American. Put another way, America will never be a Christian nation, because the moment it becomes a Christian nation, it ceases to be America. So that is the argument that I make in the founding myth, that there are these two conflicting systems, that they have irreconcilable differences. So that is the founding myth. And to make that argument, I had to break the book up into 4 basic parts. So part 1 is all about the founding fathers, their religion, or lack thereof, whether or not that's relevant. It's not. The Declaration of Independence, I go through all 4 of those different references. I explain that it's actually an anti-biblical document. And then our colonial history. And again, what I'm trying to do is give you better arguments that show that Christian principles are irreconcilable and fundamentally opposed to America's founding principles. And along the way, I'm correcting a lot of the bad history that we've learned. So for instance, I'm going to read just a little bit here. Yes, there are readings. I apologize to anybody who's having flashbacks to church right now. Just going to have to deal with it. So this is debunking one of the really popular myths that I think everybody's heard. The danger a Christian nation poses to religious liberty is exemplified in an aspect of America's religious colonial heritage that's often warped and misrepresented. Many Americans, not just Christian nationalists, romanticize the continent's first European colonists, claiming that they fled persecution in England in search of religious freedom. This is not quite true. Fleeing religious persecution is not the same as seeking religious freedom. The Plymouth Pilgrims and the Massachusetts Puritans were not seeking religious freedom. They were seeking the ability to form a government and a society dedicated to their particular brand of religion. This distinction is crucial. Religious freedom allows citizens to practice any religion so long as it doesn't infringe on the rights of others. The Mayflower settlers were looking for a place to practice their religion and to force others to practice it too. That is not freedom. It is dissent from the ruling religion and a desire to impose your own. They wanted a theocracy. As Jefferson explained 150 years later, the first English settlers may have been fleeing religious persecution, but when they gained their power, quote, they showed equal intolerance in this country, end quote. And I go over a little bit more of the history too. They actually had religious freedom when they left because they didn't leave from England. They fled and they went to Leiden in the Netherlands, where they had, as they were as free as you could have been at that time in the world. They had freedom of thought. They had at least a tolerant government that allowed them to exercise their religion. And because it was such an awful, oppressive religion, people were leaving. So they got together and said, we got to go somewhere where we can impose our religion on these folks. We need to be able to control them using the civil law as well as the religious law. We got to get out of here. We're losing people. So that's part one. Part two of the book is where I really start to get into those differences between the principles. So it's called United States versus the Bible, and I compare those central biblical principles to America's founding principles. So things like for instance, the idea of hell. And I compare that is a founding principle of Christianity. And I compare that to the Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. I look over the Golden Rule. Some people claim that founded the United States. It's a hard argument to make, but it's also irrelevant. It's beside the point. I look at the difference between the freedom that's enshrined in American documents and the obedience that is demanded by the Bible. Look at the crime and punishment from the Bible and the American founding. Look at the ideas of government. In the Bible, there's no whiff of democratic government, no whiff of representative democracy. It's all theocratic monarchies. Look at the presumption of innocence. Look at just the use of faith versus the idea of the American experiment. And again, I'm going to read a little bit here. So this is from chapter 10, where I am exploring two really central Christian ideas and comparing them to founding ideas. It's called Redemption and Original Sin, or Personal Responsibility and the Presumption of Innocence. The American system of justice and government, and perhaps our entire society, rest on the principle that people are personally responsible for their actions. The entire Christian religion is based on a singular claim that violates the principle of personal responsibility so critical to those systems, that Jesus died for your sins. Christianity's rejection of personal responsibility is actually twofold. First, a person is guilty of original sin simply because they were born. To believe this, you must accept not only that all humans descended from two originals that a God created for his garden, but also that all human beings are culpable for the actions of those two forebears, whose disobedience was prompted by a talking snake and committed millennia ago. Guilt without action is rare under our law, but it is the law for much of Christianity. Second, the sacrifice of Jesus means that one's sins are forgiven. This is vicarious redemption through human sacrifice. Jesus as a sacrificial scapegoat. Each idea is repugnant to American principles in its own way. Original sin confers guilt without regard for personal actions, while vicarious redemption absolves that guilt through the torture and murder of another human being. So part two is where we really start getting into seeing those irreconcilable differences. And hopefully you're getting a sense of why the founding myth is different than some of these other books you've read about the Christian nation. The third part of the book is called The Ten Commandments versus the Constitution. And this is actually where the founding myth was born. I initially wrote this, or started writing this, as a law review article, and it just got really out of hand really, really fast. There was a Supreme Court justice who said, of course the Ten Commandments influenced the system of American laws and government. Wrote that in an opinion, and I thought, I know that's not right. How could a Supreme Court justice say that? I'm going to write about this. I'm going to write an article. And then that article eventually exploded and became the founding myth. So in this section, I compare every one of the 10 commandments to founding principles that we find in, for instance, the 10 amendments to the Constitution that we call the Bill of Rights. And you find that every single one of the 10 commandments, every single one, is fundamentally opposed to America's founding principles. Yes, even the ones that you're thinking of right now, and you're like, well, those seem to have a lot of overlap because they say this. Yes, even those. To find out why, you have to buy the book. I'm not going to give everything away here, but I will do a reading from this section. And this is the first thing you ever need to ask somebody when you get into an argument about whether or not the Ten Commandments influenced the founding of the United States is, okay, well, which 10? And that is the title. of chapter 13. The Ten Commandments, also known as the Decalogue, supposedly the most moral law known to humanity and supposedly authored by the biblical God himself, are not easy to find in the Bible. They're not at the beginning of the book. God didn't give the rules to Eve and Adam even after their fall, nor did he give them to Noah after exterminating all human and animal life save Noah's crew. And Noah needed a bit of moral guidance. Noah's son Ham accidentally walks in on Noah drunk, naked, and passed out. Refusing to take responsibility for his frat boy behavior, Noah curses an innocent child, Canaan, Ham's son and Noah's own grandson, to a life of slavery for Ham's crime of seeing Noah naked. This was the only man this God thought moral enough to save from a worldwide flood. Yahweh did not see fit to give out the laws, his most moral laws, if Christian nationalists are to be believed, until much further along the biblical storyline. The first set, there are 4, doesn't appear until halfway through the second book of the Bible, Exodus. H.L. Mencken reportedly once quipped, "Say what you will about the 10 Commandments, you must always come back to the pleasant fact that there are only 10 of them." If that wit does indeed belong to Mencken, then so does the error. There are not 10 commandments, but 4 different sets of 10 commandments. And that's just in any given Bible. Then different religions, different sects translate the commandments differently. And these seem like small religious differences, but there's no such thing as a small religious difference when you claim to hold the ultimate truth on the basis of faith and not evidence, right? So the difference between don't murder and don't kill seems small, but it's the difference between being able to defend yourself if somebody breaks into your house at night and not. The difference between graven images and idols may seem, who cares? I mean, really, like, come on, that's what you're going to fight over? Yeah, Christendom fought a civil war over that. It split Christendom in half in the 8th and 9th centuries in something called the Iconoclast controversy, which I cover in the book. So that's part 3. 10 Commandments versus the Constitution. And again, every single one of those, after that intro chapter, I walk you through every single one of those commandments and explain why they are fundamentally opposed to America's founding principles. Now, the final section of the book, part 4, if I'm honest with you, and why wouldn't I be, I'm bitter that I had to write it. These are, in my opinion, the worst Christian nationalist arguments out there, but they are also the most popular, which says something about them. This is part 4 is called American Verbiage, or Argument by Idiom, and it goes over the things that you are probably going to hear the most. So I'll just read a little bit of the passage and then dive into that. In God we trust, one nation under God, God bless America. These tidbits are not historical so much as they are rhetorical. Their tardiness precludes arguments that they somehow prove the founding ideology, but it is worth analyzing how the verbiage entered the American vernacular, because doing so reveals something interesting about Christian nationalism. Christian nationalists take advantage of times of fear and use them to impose their God on everyone. When doing so, they often destroy earlier unifying messages with their new divisive message. But Christian nationalists ignore this logic and recite these religious idioms, each more delinquent relative to the founding than the next, to bolster their argument. In each instance, the truant language entered the American vernacular during times of fear and national crisis, during a war in one case, and in another case, at a time when witch hunters were looking for nonconformists and non-Christians, while big business was peddling religion to repeal regulations. In the final instance, the intent was to cover the most notorious presidential crimes ever committed. That was written before the president was impeached, before Ukraine, before the Mueller report, before COVID and everything. So grain of salt on that last line. Knew it was going to be bad, didn't think it was going to be quite this bad. But you can see what I'm trying to do there. I'm trying to give you better arguments. It's not just that in God we trust and so help me God aren't from the founding era. That's interesting and that's important. but it's that they were deliberately imposed on the nation by Christian nationalists during times of fear and national crisis. They couldn't have done it otherwise. Basically, they were waiting till our back was turned and then slapped their God on the money before anybody could say anything. So I don't think you've read a book like The Founding Myth. It is different. Previous books have offered these gentle corrections to the Christian nationalists. You know, here's what history tells us, and here's what the founding fathers actually meant, and here's what the founding fathers actually said, and this is the context in which they said it in. And then they've kind of left it at that. But correction is not enough. Otherwise, we wouldn't have President Trump, right? Pointing out errors is insufficient. Facts are insufficient, as sad as that statement is. So this book does that. It corrects the factual record. It gives you the real history, but then it takes the next step. It goes on the offensive because patriotism has no religion. This book is an assault on the Christian nationalist identity. Not only are Christian nationalists wrong, their beliefs and identity run counter to the ideals on which this nation was founded. They are un-American. Now, I know things are very scary right now. There's so much happening. And part of that is that Christian nationalists are raging against the dying of their privilege. And they are doing massive damage right now and seeking to codify that privilege before they lose power. But that is partly because they can read the demographic studies as well as we can. They know what's coming. And as America nears the tipping point at which Christianity's power and privilege are reduced to equality, the Christian nation myths are going to be trumpeted with renewed vigor. The Christian nationalists will not go gently into the obsolescence for which they are bound. They have grown accustomed to religious privilege. They are used to imposing their beliefs on unsuspecting school children. They expect politicians to pay lip service to their deity. They demand acknowledgments of their God on government property. But that time is ending. The end of Christian privilege is near. But you have to fight. You have to fight. As progress marches on, the lies exposed in this book will be professed more often, more loudly, and with more desperation. You must be prepared to refute them factually and vocally. The founding myth gives you the facts and it gives you better arguments, but you're responsible for the rest. Outspoken resistance is, as James Madison said, the first duty of citizens. Duty. Christian nationalists have persuaded too many Americans to abandon our heritage, to spurn our secular foundations in favor of their myth. America invented the separation of state and church. That is an American original. The idea was born in the Enlightenment, but it was first implemented in the American experiment. It is time to reclaim that heritage and to bury their lies. This is not a Christian nation. Our Constitution does not belong to the Christian nationalists. It belongs to we the people, all of the people, and it is about damn time that we take it back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I appreciate that. And I would like if everyone now could please give Andrew a large round of applause.
Thank you very much.
And I would.
I'm ready to answer questions for as long as you guys want. I just wanted to keep that a little shorter, just because I know everybody's got tons of questions probably.
Yeah, I appreciate
I'll
that.
Leave it to you to moderate it though.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to send this back over to Margaret. We've got a few questions in the queue right now. I'm going to start putting those together as Margaret speaks here for a moment. So anyone who would like a question for Andrew, please let me know and I'll add your name to the list. And if you would like me to ask the question on your behalf, just send it to me in the Zoom chat. Michael Stephen Martin, send me your question and just write the words, please ask, and I'll ask on your behalf. Otherwise, I'll just call on you and then you can ask yourself. Let me turn this over to Margaret Downey. Thank you very much. There you go.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. I loved this presentation. I don't call them the 10 Commandments. I call them the 10 Demandments. So Before we open the question and answer section of this presentation, I would like to remind the audience that the Freethought Society depends on donations to continue to offer educational programs and speakers who enlighten and motivate, just like Andrew did today. So please see the chat section of the Zoom for a direct link to the Freethought Society's donation page. Any donation amount is appreciated. And now Michael Stephen Martin will tell you, we'll handle the question and answer section. But Michael, go ahead and take it away.
Oh, yes. All right. So what I'll do is since the questions are for you, Andrew, I'm going to spotlight you as I read them aloud, and I'm compiling them as we go. So I'm going to ask you a question and get back on to my compiling duties here. Question number one. Are you concerned that in arguing that America is not a Christian nation, that you are turning off Christians by calling their religion un-American?
Yes, it's an excellent point. And I use the phrase un-American deliberately. I actually thought that it was really important to go this route. Again, remember what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give you new arguments. The facts in this book are not that new. They've been floating around for a long time. So many people out there, probably everybody listening to this, most people maybe, know what the Treaty of Tripoli is and know what it says and know how to cite it in a way that might be effective in a debate. But those facts haven't gotten us where we need to be. So I get that the word un-American, it might make a lot of people squeamish because there's this inherent value judgment built into it. But America is in a fight for its values. And Christian nationalism is warping and torturing those values. It is dragging this country down a dark hole. And if we hesitate to describe this identity with apt phrases because it may be unpleasant, we are ceding the American identity to an imposter. And I also think, too, that calling Christian nationalism un-American makes some people uncomfortable because of how successful Christian nationalism has been over the last 3 decades. And if anybody's uncomfortable using the word, I would ask yourself this. Am I uncomfortable with the American, un-American labels because Christian nationalism is already so close to completing its mission? Because they've done such a good job of corrupting patriotism and conflating it with nationalism and MAGA hats? Have they done such a good job of corrupting what it should mean to be an American that I don't want to consider myself part of it, right? Because their goal is to overtake the American identity, so that to be Christian is to be American, and to be American is to be Christian. And I don't think that my historically accurate claim that secularism is the true legacy of the American experiment is why you're uncomfortable. I think it's because they've done such a good job of taking over what it means to be an American. And that is what we are fighting against at its core. So I get that it's hard for some people to use, and it's meant to be a gut punch. I am going after their very identity. And I'm not going to win over everybody with this, but my goal is not to necessarily convince the Christian nationalists. It's to relegate them back to the fringes whence they came. That is what I am really, at its most basic level, trying to do. And I should say too, as we are discussing this, there are a lot of Christians now that are opposed to Christian nationalism. 2 gentlemen who I now consider good friends, Andrew Whitehead and Sam Perry, wrote a book called Taking America Back for God, where they study Christian nationalism. Both are opposed to Christian nationalism. Both are devout Christians. And they are helping run a group called Christians Against Christian Nationalism now. So we can find allies in this fight. But what I'm trying to do in this book is give you arguments that I have honed over a decade and found to be most successful. And they work.
Well, thank you, Andrew. I've got some more questions here, and they're coming in fast. So I hope we can get through all of these. Somebody would like to know, of all the research that you have compiled for this book, how long did it take you from start to finish to complete the book?
Yeah, well, about a decade, really, start to finish. But partly because it started off again as that law review article that I was doing in my spare time after I graduated law school, and then when I was getting my second law degree, I was kind of poking away at it, not really working at it, with the idea of it being a book, or that diligently, sort of a background project. And it stayed that way for probably 5 years. And then I realized I had more material than a law review article. I saw the coming rise of Christian nationalism, saw the rhetoric that was being trotted out, and more and more and more. And so when I sat down to really, really write it and finish the research, probably 3 years from before the time it was published at that point. I mean, just ton of research went into it. I can't describe how much. There are just shy of 1,300 citations in the book. Every one of those was fact-checked multiple different times, at least 5 different times, twice by me. Then I hired 2 independent fact-checkers, both attorneys who I knew who excel at ripping to shreds other people's briefs and arguments. And I had them go through everything, and I paid them a bounty for every error they could find in a quote or in a citation or a misrepresentation that I made. So I did that once about a year out from submitting the manuscript, and then one just before I submitted the manuscript to my publisher. That was just on me. I just did that as part of my writing process. And then I got it into my publisher, and then they went through their whole fact checking and site checking and the historical checking process as well. So I felt very, very confident in the history. I knew there was going to be a mistake here and there, but what I didn't want to be accused of and didn't want to give any credible showing of was warping or torturing the history the way that Christian nationalists do, right? Just rewriting it and ignoring facts and reality. So I wasn't necessarily as worried about, or I guess I should say I was more accepting of the fact that I would have a mistake or two, but I was unwilling to give any credence to the idea that I was misrepresenting the views of the founders when I was quoting them or altering their quotes in any way, shape, or form. So feel really, really good about all the work that went into it. Very, very proud of it in that regard.
All right, thank you, Andrew. The next question, taking them in the order they are received. Christian nationalists / fundamentalists are irrational at their core. Social media has given them immense powers to expand falsities. How do we regulate social media to prevent the threats they pose to society and democracy? Self-regulation doesn't work. Facebook is one of the worst because it allows the forming of online impenetrable cults.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge discussion topic that we could spend a really, really long time on, because there are First Amendment issues involved in that for the companies themselves and for the people on the platforms as well. So I would say that the number one thing that you as an individual can do to combat Christian nationalism is to challenge it wherever you see it. You know, that James Madison quote that it's the first duty of citizens, outspoken resistance is the first duty of citizens. We have, part of the reason we are in the bad spot that we are in right now is because little violations of the Constitution committed by Christian nationalists were not challenged early on. So when they added "In God We Trust" to our money, when they added "Under God" to the pledge, those were viewed as not big deals, and they went unchallenged. And when that happened, that then became the stepping stone for worse violations and further violations, including up to the point where we are right now, where the Supreme Court is on the brink of saying that religious people have a right to discriminate against LGBTQ folks. There's a case coming before the court, the Fulton v. Philadelphia case, that is, in all likelihood, the Supreme Court is going to decide that. And it's because they've built on this foundation of so-called minor violations. And I get into this a little bit in the book. So the number one thing that you can do is not let those go by unchallenged. Speak up against every single one of these lies and myths wherever you see it. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to write this book, is I wanted to give everybody the tools and the weapons to do that, because I can see what's happening in these online conversations, and people point to the Treaty of Tripoli, or they engage on the idea, on the fight about what the founding fathers believed. And that's a fight that we're always going to lose, and it's just a waste of our time. And we have better arguments, and they're in here. So that's the number one thing you can do, is don't let any Christian nationalist claim pass unchallenged.
All right. Our next question asks, why does it seem like our lawyers have stopped defending the Establishment Clause?
Well, as a lawyer who's dedicated his career to defending the Establishment Clause, I will disagree with the premise of the question. I think the courts have stopped enforcing the Establishment Clause, and they are working to... A good way to think about this is they are working to create a super right, a hierarchy of rights. And with religious belief, the free exercise of religion being the ultimate right, and every other right subservient to that. We have a very unfriendly court system right now that we have to do something about in the future. A big part of the fight for the separation of state and church in the coming decade is going to be a fight to recover our court system. It's not that lawyers have stopped fighting for this. FFRF still has a number of cases, and we were winning on a huge winning streak for a long time, 16-1 at one point during the first couple of years of the Trump administration. The Supreme Court is colossally, massively, hugely unfriendly to the idea that there is a separation of state and church. And Amy Coney Barrett, probably more so than some of the other justices on there, which is why everybody ought to call their senators and oppose her nomination every day until it's absolutely a foregone conclusion. Don't think that it is right now. We don't know what's going to happen. This fight is just beginning. So I mean, half the people on the Senate Judiciary Committee have COVID. Who knows what's going to happen? The only thing you can do is fight, and the best way to do that is to call your senators and oppose Barrett's nomination. Sorry, getting on a soapbox there. I'll get.
All right, I'm going to turn the next question over to Margaret. I'm going to highlight her here while she asks. And I must tell you, Andrew, you must have had people in your grip during your talk, because I got no questions while you were talking, but as soon as you finished, the floodgates opened, and I've got a good stack that we can work. If you've got time, we got a good stack.
Yeah, I'm in for it.
Margaret, the floor is yours.
So Andrew, ceremonial deism is the terminology that is used to maintain the use of under God and the pledge, and keeping in God we trust on our money, our currency and coins. And things are getting worse, because we are seeing those statements being used on display in public schools, in government buildings, in our post offices. Why? How can we stop all of this intrusion of this so-called ceremonial deism?
It's a great question. It's a poor moniker, right? Because it's not ceremonial deism. In God we trust. That's not a deistic sentiment, right? That's a theistic sentiment. So it's a bad name. It should be ceremonial theism, but the name came from a law review article that was written, and it's stuck, and courts have adopted it now. And basically what it means, for people who aren't as familiar with Margaret, who's, I think, probably, have you gone to law school yet, Margaret? You're an honorary lawyer in my book. It essentially, what courts have said is things like in God we trust and under God being added to the pledge, they're not really a big deal. They're just kind of religious. They're ceremonial, so we're not going to say that they're a violation of the First Amendment, even though they very clearly are. And to me, that exposes just the wild hypocrisy of Christian nationalism, right? A judge, a federal judge in a secular court, is saying that the phrase "in God we trust" is not religious enough to be a violation. That should piss off every single Christian in this country. They should be up in arms, screaming about a judge who has the gall to say that trusting in God is not a religious statement. Same thing with under God and the pledge. Same thing with the cross in Bladensburg, Maryland, that the Supreme Court upheld recently. Part of the reason the Supreme Court upheld this 40-foot tall cross in Bladensburg was because it's not really religious, which is first not true. Everybody knows it's religious, but second of all, should piss off every Christian in the country. How dare you, Supreme Court of the United States, say that my cross is not religious? It doesn't piss them off because they don't care about the hypocrisy of it. They care about the power of it. They care about putting their stamp, their mark. They're like dogs walking around the neighborhood trying to mark our government in favor of their religion. And it is absolutely pernicious. And as I said, it's used to uphold non-ceremonial violations. And we're getting to the point, and I trace this in the book back to from some of these serious violations that we're seeing these days down back to the more sort of quote unquote ceremonial violations. I think the best thing that we can do right now is continue to fight. I do firmly believe that under God will be excised from the pledge, and that in God we trust will be taken off of our money. I don't know when. I am reasonably certain it will happen in my lifetime. I'm not a betting man, really, but 20 to 30 years, I would think, would be the outset. We're nearing some serious demographic tipping points and demographic shifts in this country. And while we may not get it declared unconstitutional in a court of law, there are plenty of other ways to get that off our money and off our buildings.
Andrew, the terminology on money has been used to discriminate against me. It's when I was fighting the 10 Commandments being displayed at the government courthouse, so many people would come up to me and show me their money and say, "This is a Christian nation. It says right here on my money." Yeah. And I got to the point of always carrying around a $1954 bill that does not have "In God We Trust." And every time I would be encountered by someone that was so manic about it, I would pull that out and say, "Well, let me give you a little history lesson." It wasn't even
And I think that's incredibly important to do. I think that it's a reason that I talked about part 4 of the founding myth. I didn't want to write it. I'm bitter that I had to write it, but those are the arguments that you hear most frequently. And it really is worth pointing that out, that it's not from the founding era. But then I also think we need to take it a step further and point out that, look, it's actually that is a fundamentally un-American phrase. And it's not just an expression of our founding fathers because it came much later. It is fundamentally in conflict with their view of this country. And it was imposed on us during a time of national fear and crisis. This was at the height of the McCarthy era that it was put on our paper money, that it was adopted as our national motto. Also, when we got the National Day of Prayer, when they put the prayer room in the U.S. Capitol with the stained glass window of Washington kneeling in the snow and praying at Valley Forge, which didn't happen, and we know it didn't happen. That was probably one of the first waves of modern Christian nationalism that we saw, and we're still dealing with the after effects of it today because of it.
All right, thank you. Our next question comes to us from Louise. If she would please unmute. Louise, if you'd unmute yourself, and I will spotlight you here.
Okay.
You jump to the top. Here we go. All right.
Okay.
There we go.
Hi. Hello to everybody from Denmark, all across the other side of the world. Yeah, I would like to ask if you think that all the horrid things that have been done throughout the last 4 years by the Trump administration and Christian nationalists and so forth, if that is to be undone, is it possible to undo with the new government and the people rising up? And do you think it's possible?
I do think it's possible. First of all, great question. Thank you for tuning in all the way from Denmark. Louise is a little Twitter buddy of mine, and I think we should all admire her background. It was the Mel Brooks version.
Yeah,
Yeah. The 15 Commandments.
Mhm.
Love it. So yes, I absolutely believe that all Christian nationalists are raging against the dying of their privilege right now, and they are doing massive, massive damage. But I don't think we are yet at the point where we can't recover from that damage. There are a number of things that we have to do right away. I don't think another year or two of Christian nationalist rule would allow the country to survive. I am deeply concerned about another year or two of Christian nationalist rule. So that has to change. They have flooded the judiciary, the federal judiciary, with probably by the time they're done, 250 judges, including possibly 3 on the Supreme Court. Again, call your senators. That has to be fixed first before anything else. No matter how awesome the progressive plans we have and we would like to put in place to fix everything, any one of those plans has to survive a challenge in the federal judiciary that is now captured by Christian nationalists. That means number one thing we got to do is day one, fix the federal judiciary. We could double the size of it and they still wouldn't catch up on all the work they have. So we should do that. And we should not pack the Supreme Court, but we should rebalance the Supreme Court. Three seats have been stolen. By all means, put another 9 people on that court. Don't care. Don't worry. Don't get it bogged down into the idea of a tit for tat on the Supreme Court. Who cares? There's no reason the Supreme Court has to have 9 people. Put 60 people on there. I don't care. They could have 100 people on the Supreme Court. Go for it. And then so fix the courts, fix the Supreme Court, rebalance it. And then I think the number one thing to do after that, so the number 3 thing to do, is focus on democracy and expanding the vote. We are at a very strange point in our history where we're reverting to a minority rule. That's where we are right now. White, Christian, conservative, male majority attempting to solidify their ability to rule, even though they hold views that are distinctly in the minority. Right? Reproductive justice is wildly popular in this country, and they're trying to stock the Supreme Court with people that are going to the whole reason they are nominating Amy Coney Barrett is so that she can write the anti-woman opinion that strikes down Roe. That's the only reason she is being nominated. That is a wildly unpopular opinion. And we are getting further and further, their beliefs are getting further and further away from the beliefs of the mass of the country, the majority. And historically speaking, that's when you see a revolution. I'm not suggesting we're going to have an armed revolution now, but there needs to be a massive upheaval. And I think that has to happen with democratic reform, small d, democratic reform. If you want to understand all the different approaches to that, go look at H.R. 1. It was the first bill that was proposed in the new Congress back in 2018. It goes over a lot of these proposals, things like giving DC statehood, Puerto Rico statehood, expanding the electorate, ethics rules to cut down on lobbyist influence and dark money influence, things like making it easy for every single American who is eligible to vote. So things like that. And if you do all that, those 3 things, you never have to worry about the minority rule again, because they're never going to get into power, which also means you don't ever have to worry about the Supreme Court becoming a tit for tat thing, because the Christian nationalists are never going to get power again. So that's my very long-winded answer to that question. Yes, we can survive this. Yes, we can get past this. And I think if it's done right, in 2 years, the country will look wildly different than it does right now.
The rest of the world will appreciate you getting it together.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yep.
rightfully so.
Yep.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Thank you, Louise, for your question, and thank you for joining us from so far away. Nice to have you. Andrew, at last count, or current count, I should say, I have 10 questions on tap for you. So just so you know what we're looking at. If I may, I'm going to jump to a very interesting question. I want to ask that one. I'm taking them in order, but I'd like to jump to this one because I find it interesting for the room. What can a Christian who is not a Christian nationalist do? I myself, as a Christian, do not like "In God We Trust" on my money. I do not like my religion being used to discriminate against others.
Fantastic. Absolutely thrilled to hear that.
Great question.
I think you should be outspoken about it. Again, it's kind of the same answer on that front. I would reiterate everything I said about outspoken resistance. There is a group, again, Christians Against Christian Nationalism, that you might want to look into. I also think, and I think that the secular movement in general has done perhaps not the best job of explaining why separation of state and church is valuable to believers, to Christians, to believers of any stripe. And I think that's something that we could all do better, but I think it also has a lot more impact coming from especially a Christian who's a part of the majority. And the way I like to explain it to people is that there is no such thing as the freedom of religion without a government that's free from religion. If you value true religious liberty, that requires a secular government. And I get into that quite a bit in the founding myth. I believe, especially in the last and the second to last chapters, I really kind of cover that, talk about the founding. I mean, this was a really important facet for state-church separation for the founding fathers. They believed, and James Madison wrote about this very eloquently, he wrote that religion and government will both exist in greater purity the less they are mixed together. So it doesn't just help government, but it helps religion to not be involved in the day-to-day nastiness of politics. And so, and if you're trying to, it's a kind of a complicated thing to explain, but if you boil it down to that phrase, there is no freedom of religion without a government that is free from religion, that lands. People get it instantly. It works. Please take it, use it. If you forget it, it's in the founding myth. So that would be my advice there.
All right, thank you. Nicholas, you are up next. If I could have you unmute yourself, and I believe you need to turn your camera on.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I was wondering, how can we counter the argument that in the First Amendment it mentions of rather than from religion? Then some people in the Christian group feel that they can place religious monuments in public places based on that, etc.
Yeah, I mean, again, there is no freedom of religion without a government that's free from religion. And the first freedom mentioned in the First Amendment is not the free exercise of religion. It is a secular government. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and petition their government for a redress of grievances. There are 6 different rights protected in the First Amendment. The first one is to protect our secular government. And it may not use the word from, but it's pretty damn clear. And also, it's not just the First Amendment. The original, remember, the First Amendment amends the Constitution. We often forget this. The original Constitution did not mention religion, except to ban religious tests for public office in Article 6, Section 3. That was the only time the founders touched on religion in the entire document. They didn't include a God in it, which was, in addition to separation of state and church, one of the truly unique things that our U.S. Constitution did. It gets its power from we the people, not from a deity. The power flows from the people upward, not from a God downward. That was revolutionary. The few things that were truly revolutionary and unique and original to the U.S. Constitution almost all deal exclusively with secular government. And even that religious test, it says no religious test shall ever be required for any office or public trust under the United States. No, ever, any. Right? It is the most emphatic, clear, powerful statement in a document that's full of deliberately full of waffling, vague language. So this is something that was really important to them. So I mean, that idea that the founders didn't actually intend to separate state and church, only intended the free exercise of religion, is nonsense. And it's mostly nonsense because they understood that if you want to have the free exercise of religion, you have to have a separation of state and church. It's a prerequisite for genuine religious freedom.
All right, thank you. Our next question asks, are you concerned that the increasingly religious makeup of the Supreme Court will further blur the separation of church and state?
I'm concerned that this Supreme Court is going to destroy the separation of state and church for sure. I think it's less attributable to their personal religion than to more their Christian nationalist views. I mean, you are talking about 6 or 7, depending on how you want to define Catholics on the Supreme Court if Amy Coney Barrett gets in. Neil Gorsuch was raised Catholic, baptized, communion, all that stuff, and then converted to Episcopalian for his wife. And if you're a Catholic, he's still a Catholic. If you're the Catholic Church, he's still a Catholic because you can't actually leave the Catholic Church. Once you're in forever. You can't even get your name off the baptismal rolls, incidentally. So I am deeply concerned, but it's not about their religion, right? I mean, like, think about JFK's awesome ringing statement that he made in Houston before the group of clergy there. I believe in an America where the separation of state and church is absolute. One of the best, finest statements on state-church separation in American history. And it's not about their personal religion. It's about whether or not they are able to execute their oath of office. Will they uphold the Constitution, or will they uphold what they believe their God wants, their holy text, their holy writ? We know Amy Coney Barrett is going to choose her God and her Bible over the Constitution. She's said so. She's written it. She's said it. If you want more on this, go to FFRF's website. I think if you go to ffrf.us/Barrett, actually, BARRETT, ffrf.us/Barrett, we have a full report on everything she said. Not everything. A lot of the public stuff she's said and done. More and more stuff keeps coming out, and it's including stuff that she didn't include in her questionnaires to the Senate, which is called lying. That is the main concern. It's not the Catholicism of the judges. It's whether or not they will put their religion above their oath to uphold the Constitution. And some of them have made it very clear that they intend to do that.
Okay, thank you. And we've got, let's see, 8 questions on tap so far. Like I said, they keep coming in. So well, as long as you're happy to stay with us, I'd love to keep asking. This next one reads, you focused on Christianity, but many of them, I take that to mean religions. You focused on Christianity, but many of them are common with other non-Abrahamic religions. For example, anti-LGBTQ. Are you going after religious identities in general? How would that be consistent with religious freedom? When you say these arguments work, what do you mean by that? Do they change people's minds?
Yes, they change people's minds. That's what I mean by that. The arguments in the founding myth do work. They do convince people. They show them where they are wrong. All different kinds of people these have worked on. The question about other religions, I didn't focus on them in the book because they're not an existential threat to the American Republic the way Christian nationalism is. So that is what I focused on in the book. I mean, to a large extent, sure, like there's a lot of overlap between Jewish principles and Christian principles, hence Judeo-Christian, which is actually a nonsense term, which I explain on the 2nd and 3rd pages of the book. But the Hebrew Bible, what some people call the Old Testament, is part of the Christian Bible. So there's obviously a lot of overlap there, but then there are things that are not overlap. So the idea of hell, right, is properly a Christian principle. There's in Judaism, there's a place called Sheol, Sheol in English, that is sort of like a shadow land, but it wasn't a place of eternal torture and torment. Like people wanted to go there. Job, who was being tortured in real life, kind of wanted to go there. So there obviously are some serious differences. But yes, I think the main question is, are these arguments effective, and who are they effective against? Yes, they've changed minds. The number one thing people need to do when you're going into conversations trying to change people's minds about this kind of stuff is to temper your expectations. Do not go into a conversation expecting to change somebody's mind right away. Don't go in with, a Christian nationalist and expect them to come out on the other side like me. Go in hoping to plant a seed, getting them to question some of their beliefs so that later on they go do a little bit of reading on their own and put some seeds in their mind, plant some burrs in their brains so that later on they go and they convince themselves and they change their own mind. Don't expect these to work right away. It has happened. I had a crank caller once call FFRF and start screaming at me at like 6 a.m. when I was making coffee. And I ended up talking to him for like 30 minutes and totally turned him around. But very, very rare that something like that will ever happen. So temper your expectations. That's the number one thing when you're going into these fights.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Maureen, you have the next question. Would you like to ask that question yourself? If so, please unmute and I can spotlight you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. And would you like to start your video so I can highlight you, or would you just like?
My video is on it.
Is it? Okay, let me see if I can find it.
It is
there we
on
go.
my screen.
There we go.
Found it.
Yep.
Okay.
You were ahead of me on that one. Thank you, Maureen. The floor is yours. And you have a great question, by the way.
Thank you, Michael. Why is the fact that ever decreasing numbers of Americans identify as Christians is apparently contradicted by the rising strength of Christian nationalism?
Oh, fantastic question, Maureen. Thank you for asking it. So what you're seeing right now, Christian nationalists are raging against the dying of their privilege. Mm-hmm. They can read the demographic studies as well as we can, right? They are looking out, well, they were before COVID, they were looking out on Sunday mornings, and instead of seeing young, smiling faces looking back at them, they were seeing empty pews. They know what's coming. And they are doing their damnedest to solidify their privilege, to legislate and codify their privilege while they still have the power. That's what's happening. And they're doing massive damage. Again, I don't think we're at a spot where we can't recover yet. I think that the demographic studies show why they are so desperate to do it rather than undermining the point. I think it shows their motivation.
Yeah.
And I will say this too, that the demographic trend away from religion is going to accelerate soon. Nuns are already the fastest growing group. And of course, atheists and agnostics are a subset of that, not the whole thing. But still, you're talking about 9% of the population, which is more than Hindus, Jews, Buddhists, Muslims, and Mormons combined. So we're getting pretty big. But you're going to see soon us hit a tipping point, because right now, and you mentioned this a little bit in your question, right now, the default position for most people in the country is to say, yeah, I'm a Christian. And they do that without really thinking. And they do that because in the general understanding of our country, to be a Christian is to be a good person. And the Christian nationalists are torpedoing that understanding. They are showing that is absolutely not true in a way that we atheists could not have done. It's maybe one of the few silver linings here. So there's going to be soon, especially with the younger generations, a tipping point at which the default no longer is I'm a Christian, but I'm not religious. And we're starting to come up on that. I don't know when it's going to be, but once that happens and that default switches and enough people get there, all those people who just said, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, are going to also stop saying that and come over. And you're going to see just this acceleration away from religion. This was sort of a pet hypothetical of mine that I didn't talk about all that much. But I've talked about it with several serious sociologists, and they all agree. And this is apparently a known thing that we are coming up on. Nobody is exactly sure when we're going to hit the tipping point, but it's coming. And I'm very excited about it because all of a sudden you're just going to see this acceleration. And it's, I think it's one thing we can thank the Christian nationalists for, at least in part. A lot of it's all the good work that people like Margaret and the Freethought Society have been doing to build communities for non-religious people and to challenge this privilege throughout the past decades. But I'm very excited to see it happen. It's coming.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Maureen, for your question. The next question reads, I am currently fighting the Orange County Department of Education invocations during board meetings. This is the same board which wanted to take over Chino Hill's case at the appeals court level, but were denied. With the current situation with the Supreme Court and Amy Barrett, should we continue with cases or cautiously slow any cases that possibly could go to the Supreme Court?
Yeah, good question. Don't tend to give away legal strategy publicly. But it's still important, absolutely, to challenge all of these things. I did say earlier that the federal judiciary right now is very hostile to state-church separation and to the idea that, for instance, a school board couldn't pray. They would certainly be hostile to that. However, that is, I think, one of the reasons we need to be arguing for a fix to the federal judiciary in the coming months. And again, not just the Supreme Court, but the whole thing. And I can tell you there are a lot of different groups. There's something called the Leadership Conference for Civil and Human Rights. It's a very huge umbrella organization. Tons of different organizations are a part of this, including the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And they have a Fair Courts Task Force. I'm a part of that task force. Our whole goal is to look at solutions to these issues. And of course, the FFRF legal team, the Freedom from Religion Foundation legal team, we've got 10 lawyers on staff, pays absolutely... It's excruciatingly close attention to these issues. You can't imagine how close we are looking at all the different possible cases. And we are very, very selective these days about what cases we take and why. And a big part of it is being able to tell the story. The Orange County School Board is just, in California, is a ridiculous group of people. And I would absolutely challenge it. And just because something is not going to be struck down in the courts, or you're not going to get a successful challenge in the courts, doesn't mean you shouldn't challenge it and speak out against it anyway. You know, I've been doing this now for a decade as an attorney, and it became clear to me early on that we weren't going to win most of these fights in the courts, that we were going to win it with demographics. And it's really crucial for everybody to understand. It's going to be grassroots groundswells, people willing to stand up and go to public meetings and say, what you're doing is wrong. And here's why it's wrong. And if they continue to do it, to run against those people and challenge them and unseat them. That is the way we are going to win a lot of these fights. We shouldn't necessarily put all the burden on the shoulders of the attorneys in this movement. There are not many of us. FFRF has 10 attorneys. ACLU has 3 that do this. Americans United for Separation of State and Church, I think, has 6. You know, I mean, you're talking all told, you're talking about, including American Atheists, American Humanist Association, you're talking about 20 people that do this work. And we need your help. We need you to be challenging these things on the ground. That is where we are going to end up winning in the long run a lot of these issues. Not to say we're going to stop challenging them. We will.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Thank you to everyone who's submitting questions and being patient. I am doing every one of these in the order received, and I think we've got about 6 at this point, 6 more. So someone has asked Andrew if you would please refresh our memories about the Treaty of Tripoli.
Okay. So for people who don't know, the Treaty of Tripoli is a document that the U.S. government signed. It was if everybody remembers, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, this is the Marines fighting song, and this is about, they were battling the pirates off the coast of the Treaty of Tripoli, or excuse me, the battling the pirates off the coast, the Barbary coast, where Tripoli is, and they negotiated. The U.S. government negotiated a treaty, and it was late 1790s. the negotiations began under George Washington, and they were finalized under John Adams. And they got this great treaty that says the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, which is like really clear, really useful language. And it was, again, negotiated under Washington, unanimously approved in the U.S. Senate in 1797, and then signed by John Adams. So a lot of the founding fathers were kind of in on this and signed off on that language, which is pretty remarkable. And it's admirably clear language, but it's been around for a long, long time, and it hasn't been that useful to us in making our points because it's a fact. And again, we need more than facts. We need better arguments, which is, again, what I'm trying to do in the founding myth, is to give you those better arguments that you can use to then win the debates and win these arguments and change people's minds.
All right. Someone would like to know, as I would, this is a great question. Have you ever lost your cool while discussing these subjects with Christian nationalists? Sometimes I feel like screaming at the TV when watching some of their arguments.
No, I don't think I have. I mean, as being a lawyer, you're kind of trained to, like, if you were to do that in front of a judge, for instance, you would it would not work out well for you. If anybody wants to see some examples of this being tested, I have gone on. Jesse Lee Peterson is like way out there Christian nationalist, way far out there. Like very easily people we would call, crazy, quote unquote. I've been on his radio show a number of times on video, and I think it's probably a good example of how I approach some of the more frustrating Christian nationalists. And some of that's on my Facebook page, Andrew L. Seidel, Seidel. If you want to go see some of that, I've been on his show like 5 or 6 times. My first ever national TV interview was on Bill O'Reilly's show, The O'Reilly Factor, talking about "So Help Me God" and the presidential oath. And for that, his whole shtick, the whole Fox News shtick, is they want to have atheists and secularists on there to be punching bags that they can beat up on and bully. And they do that by interrupting you. And so anytime you open your mouth, they jump in and try to knock you off what you're planning to say. So to prep for that, the night before, it's hard, right? Because if you're a human being who was raised with a modicum of decorum, you were raised to not speak when other people are. And that usually applies even if somebody interrupts you, you tend to quiet down and listen. And if you do that on their shows, you're never going to get a word out edgewise. So what I did was, when I got home after work and I found out I was going to do that show in the morning, I turned on those awful local commercials, the terrible local commercials that are loud and all about cars and come on down and all that awful just nonsense. And I turned it up like full volume. And all I tried to do was get out like 1 or 2 sentences while these commercials were going on. And that was how I prepped for those interviews. So, I mean, it does take a little bit of, I guess, training to be able to do that. The more you do it, certainly, I think the easier it gets. And I'm at the point, and I think that this is what I try to do in the founding myth, where I've not heard any new arguments in a very, very long time. And the question that I love to ask is, okay, just name me a single Christian principle that positively influenced the founding of the United States of America. It has to name me a principle that's unique and original to Christianity that positively influenced the founding. And that can't be done. They can't do that. You'll get some answers, like, for instance, they'll say, well, the 10 Commandments say don't murder. Like, yeah, but that's not a Christian principle. That's a universal human principle. And you're just claiming it for your particular religion, which is monumentally arrogant. So move on, pick another one. And it just can't be done. So that's a fun question to ask if you ever get stuck. Just name me one principle that's unique and original to Christianity that positively influenced the founding. You can't do it.
Good tactic. Hey, real quick, we've got about 5 questions maybe. How are you doing on time? How long do we have you?
We'll get through them. Yeah, we'll get through them. I'm a little distracted watching Zenos Frodakis work in his workshop on the little window up top, which I noticed about 5 minutes ago, and I'm just, hey, Zenos. But other than that, I'm good on time. Yeah, let's go.
Okay,
I want to make
fantastic.
sure everybody gets answers.
All right, just want to make sure we didn't keep you over time. So our next question asks, somebody asked that you would please comment on the new Mississippi state flag, which takes out the Confederate flag, but insists on "In God We Trust."
Yeah, so I've actually written a little bit about this, and you can go find my writings on this. But fantastic that they're getting rid of the Confederate symbol. Very clearly a racist, exclusionary, alienating symbol. And it's worth pointing out that the overlap, that if you were to look at a Venn diagram of Christian nationalists and white nationalists in the United States, it would look pretty close to a circle. White supremacy and Christian nationalism are really incestuous bedfellows. And Mississippi's getting rid of that one deeply exclusionary, awful symbol and replacing it with another exclusionary symbol. And it's not looked on with the revulsion that the Confederate symbol is looked on right now. I think it will be in the future looked on with a revulsion that's probably not that level, but getting there. Is not that level, but would be getting close. It is meant to exclude. And when this was proposed, I actually went through and I found a couple of quotes from some of the legislators who were opposing this. This is to show what kind of people we are in Mississippi. And again, it's that central core of Christian nationalism, trying to redefine what it is to be an American, or in their case, to be a Mississippian, so that to be a Mississippian is to be a Christian, and to be a Christian is to be a Mississippian. Everybody else, get out. You're second-class citizens. You're not real Americans. You're not real Mississippians. They're trying to steal the American identity. That is what they are trying to do. That's what the fight that we are in. So again, that's why I think it's absolutely crucial to hit them in the gut and point out that it's fundamentally un-American what they're trying to do. That America could not be a Christian nation, because the moment it becomes a Christian nation, it ceases to be America. So, but yeah, I've written about this. If you're more interested, if that's not a deep enough answer, definitely go. Just if you Google my name and Mississippi flag, it'll probably pop up.
The next question says, please ask how we can challenge the phrase "sincerely held beliefs" when discussing civil rights and constitutional law. Why do beliefs overwhelm facts and reason?
Yeah, let me do a little bit of explaining for people who may not be familiar. So there's a law called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and basically it says that for the government to burden somebody's sincerely held religious beliefs, the government has to meet this very, very high bar. There has to be no other alternatives for what they're trying to do. A couple different things that they have to go through that are not that relevant. And the sincerely held religious beliefs part of it should be an inquiry that is made in the courts when they're analyzing a challenge under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So for instance, in the Hobby Lobby case, everybody remembers that, that was a challenge to the contraceptive mandate in the Affordable Care Act by the Hobby Lobby Corporation. And Hobby Lobby said, providing contraception, including these abortifacients that were not abortifacients, it violates our sincerely held religious beliefs. And therefore, we don't have to follow the law. And again, the Supreme Court did this other version of this other part of the inquiry that I'm not going to get into because I worry it might just confuse people. But they didn't look at the issue of whether or not Hobby Lobby actually sincerely believed these things. And that's most of the time what happens. The court just ignores whether or not the beliefs are sincerely held and accepts the statement of the person in court saying that it is their sincerely held belief. Never mind that Hobby Lobby, for instance, was invested heavily in some of the companies that manufactured these drugs that they supposedly said violated their religious freedom. leading up into the litigation, which would indicate that they don't really have these sincerely held religious beliefs. But courts historically are unwilling to look at whether or not people actually believe these things. And I do think that's a mistake a lot of the time. The one area where that's not true is courts do look at it in the case of prisons. So prisoners often challenge a lot of the rules and regulations, and they do so on religious grounds. And there's a different law called the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act that specifically applies to prisoners, but it's got a similar test to the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And there, courts will look at whether or not the prisoners sincerely believe what they claim to believe, because oftentimes they are just making things up to make their lives easier in prison. But I wish they would extend that to other places, though they're unwilling to do so, and it does make a certain amount of sense as well. Not a very popular fight to have. The better fight to have in this area is to point out that religious liberty is not an excuse to violate someone's rights. There's often this tension between, they're trying to weaponize religious freedom right now, trying to turn it into a weapon to allow them to impose on other people's beliefs. It's not hard to draw these lines. It's very easy to draw the lines when we're talking about religious freedom. Your right to religious liberty ends where somebody else's rights begin. There's that old idiom about your right to swing your fists ends where somebody else's nose begin. Your right to swing your religion or your rosary or your self-flagellating whip ends where other people's rights begin.
All right, thank you. At the beginning of that question, I was going to ask if maybe you could move your mic up just a little more, just so we could get a little more volume value from your volume. Excellent. Very good. Thank you, Andrew. The next question asks, what should the government do when the exercise of one private citizen's religion infringes on another private citizen's religion?
Hey, good question.
Yeah, good timing.
Yeah, and again, to me, these questions are not that hard. Your right to exercise your religion ends where somebody else's rights begin. And so one particular religious right should be a license to impose on somebody else's rights. There are a lot of instances where we're seeing this crop up. Your right, I like this example of the self-flagellation. Supposedly, Pope John Paul II supposedly self-flagellated to get closer to God. I don't know if that's true. That's not my cup of tea. I'm not into whipping myself at all. Don't recommend it. He's free to do that all he wants, but he can't do that to someone else as part of his exercise of religion, right? That makes obvious sense. Thomas Jefferson said that it neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg for my neighbor to say that there are 30 gods or there is no God. And the point he was trying to make is that laws can reach actions, but not beliefs. So those are the two lines that we draw. The first line we draw is you can think whatever the hell you want. You can believe whatever the hell you want. That is the one absolute right we have in this country as Americans. The only right that we have is absolute. You can believe whatever you want, but you don't get to act on that belief. If you act on that belief, the civil law can step in. The civil law can regulate action. So that's the first line. There's a line between belief and action. The second line that we draw is, okay, well then when can the government step in on action? And that answer is when your free exercise of religion starts violating other people's rights. When you decide you want to whip somebody else instead of yourself, the government can step in and say, hey, that's assault, we're arresting you. And you don't get to claim religious freedom as a right to do that. So to me, these are not hard questions. Draw that line between action and belief, then draw that line between the rights of other people and yourself. And that answers 99.9% of the questions about religious freedom.
All right, we're down to our last couple questions here. This one asks, as an attorney, do you believe the Supreme Court can reliably switch precedents when such rulings require language that contradict past rulings? For example, if they remove separation of church and state, how in the future can the court go back?
Good question. The court has changed its mind often in the past, including on pretty important issues. What you're talking about is going from A to B and then back to A. I believe that's what the questioner is asking, which is a much harder question to answer, because historically we've not seen that type of regression from the court. The Supreme Court is a deeply conservative body and has been for its entire history, with the exception of the Warren Court. We got these couple decades where it was a progressive and just body in a way that we had not seen throughout our history. And part of what we're seeing then is the conservative court being conservative for most of its history, A, then getting into the progressive Warren Court, B, and now we're getting back into this deeply conservative court talking about undoing B and going back to A. And then how would we get to B again? Really hard question. Don't know the answer that it would happen, other than the decisions that you're seeing out of the Supreme Court right now regarding state-church separation and religious freedom are very clearly deeply, deeply flawed. Going back to that Cross case, the American Humanist Association case versus American Legion, I wrote about this quite a bit after it came out. It's a deeply flawed case that, instead of relying on legal and constitutional principle, it relies on bad history to reach its decision. So it elevates history over legal principle, which is, again, one of the reasons that this is so important. That is Christian nationalism. That those myths and those lies are what we are fighting against. Some of the stuff that Alito pointed out in his majority opinion is debunked in this book. So the good news that you're seeing right now is those opinions are terribly reasoned, just bad, poorly reasoned opinions. And that makes it easier to overturn those later on. So that's I think there is room for hope there as well.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Our final question at the moment, and I believe I got to everybody. Please forgive me if I missed your question. Please let me know as soon as we get done with this question. If you want to jump in at the end, we can. If Andrew is okay, we have time for that. We've got Adrian in Oahu, who is next. I'm going to add that spotlight.
Hey, how's it?
There we go. Welcome, Adrian.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Aloha. I just wanted to say hi. Sorry about the wind. And first, just Andrew, thanks so much for what you're doing, man. It's so awesome. And it was kind of a scary realization when you mentioned how few people are doing what you're doing, you know. And so just thanks for everything. It's so great. And following all the way from Hawaii has been great. So thank you. I was wondering, just kind of, I guess, kind of a hypothetical at first here is the premise, but assuming, like, let's say Joe Biden wins the election, and then even, you know, grander, let's say, you know, we get more control of the House and Senate. So for our country, what would be one of the first things that you would recommend or that you would like to see our government then do to kind of then undo some of what Trumpo's been doing and the way that it's been going, you know, in the last several years? What would be one of the first things that you would like to see them do?
Yeah, I mean, steps 1, 2, and 3 are easy. Double the size of the federal judiciary. That's step 1, to rebalance the federal judiciary. Then rebalance the Supreme Court is step 2. We could bundle those together as one step if we wanted to. And then there has to be a massive push towards expanding the electorate as much as possible. There are so many Americans whose right to vote is suppressed and otherwise oppressed. I mean, and there are so many. This is one of the probably the only other silver lining for me in this Christian nationalist administration that we are facing right now is it has exposed a lot of the anti-democratic institutions in a way that I never fully appreciated before. And again, a lot of those democratic principles, small d, are in HR 1. It's a little bit of a convoluted because it's a bill, but you know, it explains a lot of the different things that we can do to expand that electorate and really give everybody the right to vote. And if you do that, you don't have to worry about more of a fight on the courts and rebalancing the Supreme Court again. It ends things. It ends the ability for minority rule. I'd love to see, for instance, the Electoral College be abolished. That would take a constitutional amendment, but there's a way around that. There's a creative way around that. There's a multi-state compact where when enough states sign on to this agreement, they all agree to apportion their electoral votes by majority rather than winner take all, which would certainly change things a lot. I mean, even the Senate is a deeply anti-democratic body that we should maybe be talking about getting rid of too. So there's a lot to be done, but the three big things are federal judiciary, expand the Supreme Court, rebalance it, correct the Supreme Court, and then expand the electorate as much as possible.
All right, thank you, Andrew.
Thanks so much, Andrew, for everything you do. Sorry, aloha, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you for coming all the way from Oahu. We've got Oahu and Denmark in the house today. That's amazing. Now, I believe I got through everybody's questions. If anybody did not get their question in, please speak now or forever hold your peace. Is there anyone? You can unmute yourself, holler out your name if you have a question. If not, that will wrap up the Q&A.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, I had made a comment that in Jefferson, in his book, The Commonwealth Place, has cited Voltaire, who cited Darius the Great in saying that we should not regulate or control religions, and that he took that to mean there must be a separation between church and state, and that was 3,000 years ago. So that's a pretty exciting origin story. And I'm just wondering, in terms of the United States and this principle, when do you think there was a turning point of it being abandoned as a primary principle?
I mean, I don't think it's been abandoned. I think it's been deliberately subverted by the Christian nationalists. I mean, I think that is one of their primary goals, is to be able to use the power that belongs to we the people, and to use offices that belong to we the people to impose their personal religion on everyone. And the best way for them to do that is to spout these lies about there never having been a separation of state and church, and that the founding fathers didn't intend this, and that, ignore the evidence of your own eyes and your ears, as Orwell wrote in 1984. So I don't know that there's ever been a time where the country itself has turned its back on it or abandoned it. But there has been a deliberate attempt to subvert it with this most recent wave of Christian nationalism. And I don't think we've quite seen such a deliberate attempt in the past. It's one of the reasons it's so crucial to be pushing back against Christian nationalism and have the arguments to defeat it, because I don't think we've faced a challenge like this.
Andrew, someone in the chat is asking, what are your views on the tax status of religious organizations?
Ooh, excellent question. To me, the bigger and more interesting question, and it's the first question we got to answer before we get to whether or not churches should be taxed. I'll leave everybody to wonder about what my views on that might be. Is they do not have to file any financial information with the IRS. So the Freethought Society, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, every other 501c3 and charity in the country has to file financial disclosures with the IRS. And the bigger you are, the more onerous they are. FFRF tracks every penny that comes in, every penny that goes out. And these are made public. And churches don't have to do that. If you declare yourself a church, you don't have to file any paperwork with the IRS at all. They are financial and informational black holes. And there's no reason for that. There's no religious freedom right that they can claim to say we don't have to disclose our finances. Tax exemption is a privilege. It's not a right. And the government can attach strings to that privilege, including you have to tell us how much money you make and where it's going, including you don't get to endorse political candidates because we want charitable donations going to charitable work. So that to me is the thing that we ought to be talking about and focusing on, not as appetizing and juicy as that conversation it is to talk about taxing the churches. Let's talk about treating the churches equally instead of favoring them. Let's find out how much money they're taking in and what they're spending it on first. Then we can move forward from there.
Thank you, Andrew. If you've got time, I've got two more juicy questions that got tacked on at the end. They made me smile. Maybe they're not juicy. They're good. They're great questions, and I just want to get your feedback. The first question, would you accept a seat on the Supreme Court if asked?
Sure, why not? I mean, lifetime appointment. The hardest problem for me would be shutting up. I mean, there's zero chance I would ever get confirmed. It'd be a hilarious confirmation hearing to see. I mean, but yeah, I will. Why would I not say yes?
Fantastic.
Sure.
All right, and someone prefaced this. Here's a very wild question. With general AI, artificial intelligence, coming online in a few decades, how will this impact our laws? How will they apply to artificial AI people? How would our laws see them as a sentient demographic whose likely atheist views will need protection?
Yeah, I am not going anywhere near that one. I don't know enough to wade into it. I mean, fascinating area, really interesting stuff. But I have not looked into the legal questions enough. Though I gotta say, what's that movie, the Ex Machina, the movie about artificial intelligence, and I think about that movie all the time after seeing it. It's really fascinating, interesting stuff. That is a conversation for when COVID is over and we're post talk. Yes, yeah, that's the movie. Post talk at a bar and can all chat over an adult beverage or non-adult beverage of choice, and then I'll weigh in.
All right. Well, on that note, I think that brings us to the very end of the questions. Hey, everybody, how about a big round of applause for Andrew for that talk, huh? All right. Margaret Downey, I am going to highlight you, my friend. It feels like you have been away for a while. What a great chat. You've got the floor.
Well, in regards to fighting for separation of religion and government, my motto and that of the Freethought Society is never hesitate to litigate. So we've had the history of things thrown in our face instead of Constitution prevailing in a decision. They always say, well, the plaque was 80 years old, or, that's been going on for so long. We're just going to let it stand. So never hesitate to litigate. But I want to take this opportunity to not only thank Andrew, but also to thank Marjorie Goldman for the very nice introduction. And thanks also to Michael Stephen Martin for being our co-host today. You do such a wonderful job with the questions and the technology. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Past recordings of the Freethought Society monthly presentations can be found on the Freethought Society YouTube channel. And if you missed anything today, this particular event will be posted there soon. Please share the link with your friends, associates, and family so that more people can become aware of the founding myth and why Christian nationalism is un-American. We enjoy bringing you these Zoom event presentations, and there are more to come. Please join us on Sunday, November 1st at 11:45 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, or it's 2:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, when we host the 2020 Secular Day of the Dead. That's Dia de los Muertos. The Secular Day of the Dead is co-sponsored by the Freethought Society, Hispanic American Freethinkers, American Atheists, and the Freedom from Religion Foundation, as well as the Center for Inquiry. Our special guest will include Annie Laurie Gaylor, David Tamayo, Robin Blumner, Nick Fish, and the actor, John Huertas. Also the author, Sasha Sagan, and the sculptor who was here with us today, Zenos Frudakis, and Hollywood legend and Broadway music star, John Davidson. We're also hosting author Fernando Alcantar. Dan Barker from the Freedom from Religion Foundation will present his journey story from evangelical preacher in Mexico to becoming a famous atheist. So please see the Freethought Society meetup description for more details. And for those who would like to stay to socialize, speaking of having a drink with you, Andrew, we will take a 5 to 10 minute break and meet you back here. It's actually almost 5 o'clock where I'm located. So I'm going to go get a glass of wine and come back to chat. Thanks again for attending, and thanks to all of those who have already donated. This helps us to continue educating and providing educational / entertaining programs. My friend Abraham Stephen Mackey sent us an original song, and we're going to play that for you today because the message is so important for this time that we're going through. His song title is "We Are All in This Together." So if you're stepping away from your computer, turn up the volume so you can hear the song from another room. And I will be highlighting the email address for you to get more information about the Secular Day of the Dead as I go for a moment to the kitchen.
And thank you again, Andrew, for being our speaker today. It was great to meet you. And I must compliment your style and shirts. I think you and I must shop at the same store.
Well, I mean, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you, Margaret. Really great hosts. I really appreciated the opportunity to come speak with you and everyone. And hopefully sometime we'll do it again in person. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a wonderful day. Appreciate it. I'll see everybody in a couple minutes here once we come back from a break.
Bye.
When I think of what we've got and how wonderful life is, I want everyone to know we're all in this together. We're all in this together. Some parts are rough, I know. Some days are tough, I know. Still, it helps to remember we're all in this together. We're all in this together. There's no magic wand, there's no secret key, no one to save us except for you and me. You just can't make a wish and make things go away. Heaven and hell are dreams, but love is here to stay. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. There's no magic wand, there's no secret key, no one to save us except for you and me. You just can't make a wish and make things go away. Heaven and hell are dreams, but love is here to stay. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. When I think what we've got and how wonderful life is, I want everyone to know we're all in this together. We're all in this together.
Good stuff. What have you got there? Secular Day of the Dead?
I'm not seeing anything on my screen.
You're doing share screen. Your video's on. I can see you holding up
Okay.
your page there. There you go.
All right, there we go. So that's if anybody wants information about the Secular Day of the Dead, they can send an email to this email address and I will answer. I'll put it in the chat as well.
In the chat too. Oh, good idea. Speaking of chat, what should we talk about?
Well, I was hoping I could talk to Adrian from Hawaii. Is
he still here? We may have lost Adrian.
Yes, no, I'm here.
Oh,
I did take my shirt off though.
Oh, that's okay. Here, let me take mine off.
How's it? How's it going?
Wow, it just got happy hour real fast.
Yeah. I'll go put some Kahlua in my coffee.
Adrian,
Yes, ma'am.
I used to go to Hawaii every year for like 10 years. My husband and I actually owned a place in Princeville in Kauai.
On Kauai, yes. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we loved it. We sold the house. It actually got kind of boring for me personally because
it's very country.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That's a good thing about Oahu is that you kind of have both. You know, you still have some city life if you want to, you know, back in the before days when you could go out and stuff. And then there's still really good outdoor hikes and the ocean is great. That's what I love about Oahu. Yeah.
When did you come back to the States at all?
I visit my family in Los Angeles and then my wife's family in like Colorado, Montana. So we get to the West, which is my favorite, I love. And then, yeah, about once a year we would go. Yeah, but it's been great. I've been living out here since 2006. So it's been great. I've gone to,
show us some.
Yeah, so here's our front yard. I'm in Kaneohe. So that's Ko'olau Mountain. And then, so it's the Ko'olaus. All I see is the overhead power lines, but that's just me. So we're in a cool little neighborhood out here.
Does that mountain get a waterfall certain times of the year?
It has to rain a lot for the waterfalls to be on this face here, but it does once it like really rains a lot. And then it's funny, the way the watershed is just on the other side of that mountain. It's like the H3 freeway, and there's that famous hike, Stairway to Heaven. I don't know if people are familiar, but it's the peak up there that for some reason, the way that the watershed goes, there's like so many waterfalls on that other side, like from a little bit of rain. So when you're driving on the H3 to go to the other side of the island, there's this beautiful drive. And then there's like, just like walls of waterfalls that they get on that side. We don't really get it on this side, but it's beautiful. Yeah.
That's what I miss so much about the landscape in Hawaii, the waterfalls.
Hey,
and the food.
Yes, yeah. Good grinds. Hey, can I also say I've gotten on the religious or church-state separation front. I have gotten to cause a little bit of good trouble out here on Oahu, because I don't know if people know like how very religious Hawaii is, and how very successful various missionaries were in the islands, all over Polynesia too. You know how successful they were at getting a lot of converts, you know, so Hawaii is a pretty religious place. And I've gotten to, one time David Barton was out here and he did like a talk at the state capitol, in the basement of the state capitol. And I was able to go with Guy, do a podcast. And so I was able to interview him kind of like just at the end of the talk. And it ended up getting a little bit confrontational because of his son. His son was kind of a prick. And And so it got pretty funny. And then, so I got to do that and then go to other, like whenever there's like an anti-abortion thing at the state capitol, like a lot of people turn out, you know. And then Franklin Graham gave a talk at the state capitol one time, and I went to that and like interviewed some people there, and it was pretty interesting. So over here, there is kind of an interesting little front in that regard too, you know, with church-state separation. It's a pretty interesting place, and because I do kind of miss and follow the stuff going on the mainland too, you know, but it's kind of interesting what's going on out here too, you know.
Well, it sounds like you need Andrew's book so that you can build up your talking points and sound bites.
For sure. For sure, yeah. One of the things I did talk to Dave Barton about was how like so few of the 10 commandments are actually in our law, you know. And he got annoyed when I said you're one of the commandments is you can't lie, and that's not a law in our country. But it's like, but if you lie under oath, like in a court under oath, then that's a crime. I was like, so I'll give you a half point for that one, okay? And he's like, I'm not interested in your half points.
What is he interested in? Converting you?
Right. No, he was there like, you know, it's this funny, like they want to have it both ways kind of thing, where they were literally at the state capitol. It was, you know, almost filled. The room was almost filled to capacity. And then they're talking about how wonderful it is or how we need to do all these things. But then at the same time, they're oppressed, you know? And so it's this weird like balance. And then I very like the snarkiest I got, because I very much try to be very like respectful. But with him, like, because I know like kind of who he is and like kind of just all the stupid stuff he said online, the snarkiest I asked him with like a straight face, you know, I asked him, you know, you mentioned the religious persecution that Christians face. I was like, tell me, Mr. Barton, what is the hardest part about being a Christian white man in America today, where you only have most of the positions of power, but not all? I was like, tell me about your plight. And I think that's when he kind of saw that there was more of a Daily Show thing going on, you know?
Good. I would love to hear from Louise from Denmark.
Right on. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, the miles between you and Adrienne is just amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's huge. I was kind of wondering if you would allow me to attend tonight, because I wasn't, you know, I'm not American. But Andrew said that it would be okay. So and I tried to connect, and it was okay. So I was happy to be here and to join you.
Our next event, Louise, is going to be international, and we're going to have people from all over the world attending the Secular Day of the Dead. In fact, almost 2,000 people have expressed interest already from South America to Spain. Please join us.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, it is right now. It's almost, I think it's 11 p.m. here. But yeah, and I think it will be approximately the same with the Day of the Dead event, but for me, but I will still join. It sounds interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So tell us about separation of religion and government in Denmark. What are your battles that you need to fight there?
I would say pretty much most of the Danish population are non-believers. We haven't had, as I wrote in the comments section or the chat section, I wrote that in 1536, with the Reformation, the bonds between the king, which were the government back then, here in Denmark, and Christianity were really tight. But in 1849, our constitution reserved a space for freedom of religion, and it kind of escalated from there. And we had the tipping point that Andrew was talking about. I would really say it happened in the 80s or 90s here, or in the 1980s, 90s, because a lot of people realized that they weren't really believing the same things that their parents were, the grandparents were. So, and they wanted to state that as a fact, not just, live it in their daily lives. They wanted to tell people about it. So we saw a change happening from people just accepting all the Christian traditions like infant baptism and confirmation and so forth. It's been ingrained in our culture for so long, and everybody just said, well, we're supposed to do this. And when you question them and said, why are you doing this? Well, they did it before me, and my mom said I should do it, and so forth. And all of a sudden during the 80s and 90s, there was this, I don't know, kind of grassroots movement, and people started saying, but why are we doing this? This makes no sense, because we actually don't believe in a God. So why are we standing here in a church saying that we do? Because that is actually a lie, and we're not, that is not integrity. So I would say more and more people, my son just this past month had non-formation, as we call it, actually, as a kind of, it's kind of a bit of a protest to the confirmation part, and only 5 in his class actually did that. And we asked the other parents, but why are you doing this? Why are you saying yes to the confirmation part? Well, it's tradition. Why shouldn't we? And then we just said, well, okay, we do not prescribe to that tradition. So, but it's your free will to do that, and we will not oppress you in any way as long as you don't oppress us. So yeah, so it's kind of funny, because most Danes are non-believers, and at least 23% of Danes are openly atheist. So yeah.
Well, very interestingly, you brought up the confirmation as a ritual and tradition. And I have a friend in Iceland who, when she moved there, she realized that this religious confirmation was happening almost like cattle being sent for slaughter. People just did it without even thinking. So what she developed was a secular confirmation ceremony. And now the secular confirmation ceremony is 10 times bigger than the government-sponsored one. And Iceland, and I'm not saying my friend Hope was the singular person responsible for this, but 90% of the Iceland residents are atheists. It is the highest count of atheist citizens in the world. So I'm just so proud to know Hope. Maybe I could connect you with Hope, and would you consider fighting for a secular confirmation?
I would. There actually is the same here in Denmark. We had, as I actually asked my son if he would join as part of this whole kind of protest towards the confirmation. And we were actually going to have it. We were actually going to go to this secular confirmation, and that their focus is, being a good citizen, being, mature and empathetic and taking care of your fellow man. That's their focus. But unfortunately, it was kind of cancelled because of COVID. So they said, yeah, it was going to be here in August, and it was in the beginning of May at first. Then we couldn't have it, and then they moved it to August, and it was still, yeah. So they said we could do it next year, and they were really heartbroken because a lot of people had signed up for it. Yeah. So it's already here, but I would like to talk to Hope. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I love to make connections. So let me, I believe I have your email address because you donated. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I will connect you with my friend Hope. and the two of you will just get on fabulously. You're
Sounds great.
very
Sounds
much
great.
the same.
Thank you.
And who else can we hear from that's from a far away? Oh, I wanted to mention to Adrian that we do a lot of events in California. Once COVID is over, perhaps we'll be scheduling an anti-superstition party in California. We've conducted 2 already, one in Fullerton, California, and one in Los Angeles. It's conducted on Friday the 13th. And we have a blast making fun of superstitions on Friday the 13th. So someday.
That sounds awesome.
Together.
That sounds cool. Yeah, I'm from Southern California, actually. It's from the San Fernando Valley. So
okay.
that works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Well, we have a very special person in the chat room. Zenos Frutakis is with us. He's a very famous sculptor. Zenos, are you still there? Maybe I.
We need to unmute you, Zenos. If you could.
Can you say hi, Zenos?
I think if you click your space.
All right, I did it. Can you hear me? You've given me voice. I have to start thinking verbally again. I've been working non-verbally, and I have to make a switch sometimes. But is Andrew still there?
No, Andrew left. He has his own personal happy hour.
Does he have a personal life? Okay. Well, I downloaded his Audible book. I mentioned I was going to do that the last time I saw him in Washington. And then, one thing led to another. And I have about 1,400 of these audiobooks because I get to listen while I work. So I'm going to be listening to one on Justice Ginsburg soon. So while I'm working on this, I can listen to her biography. So I try to turn the verbal biography into a visual biography. But it was wonderful listening.
It looks beautiful.
Oh, thank you. She has a long ways to go, but who was it? Michelangelo used to say to his pieces, he'd tap them and say, "Speak, speak." So I don't know. More like scream, scream once I'm hitting him on the head. But it'll get there. I think it's on its way. It's an interesting journey. I'm hoping part of it is, I grow while this is growing, and hopefully that will happen. And I wanted to have. I thought she deserved, because of her secular work and work with women, and that there should be a good representation of her. So this is my attempt to do it. But as I say, it's still early. You see the photos in the background. Fantastic. And I have Ben Franklin over there, and a 7-foot statue of him. And I was thinking about America as beginning as an Enlightenment project. The idea that you had to get away from deities because the kings, King of England and others said, we're here because a deity put us here. And it would be sacrilegious to remove us. And we had to kind of America had to remove that idea of they had to have the Enlightenment idea of a secular world to say it's okay to get rid of the king and we don't need that. And we can have a world that's centered on ourselves, on people. Men and women are as the measure of all things, is to kind of paraphrase Protagoras. It'd be fun.
Zenos, how long does it take you generally to do one complete? Do you call it a bust? Is that what you refer to?
This is a bust, and okay. People ask that question, and I say I update my answer to 69 years. Let's say now, because I'm 69. It takes this was a few days work. But it's not a few days work because it's my lifetime that I put into it. And then it's the lifetime of my half brother who mentored me, and he lived to be almost 98. And then to add his years to my years, and then he studied with somebody, add her years, and she studied with Rodin. So add those years. And that's, so you have to, it goes back. There's a kind of, and it's not only that, I have old plastiline, it's 100 years old, and old clay tools. And I like history very much. I love history. And so this is a way to touch, to be part of it in a way for me to shape it a little, perhaps, and literally to form it in my own little way. I felt so frustrated watching the debates, and I started this just a little before the debates in anticipation. Then while they were on, I did much of the work that's on here during the debate while Old Yeller was on. And because I needed to have some control over because I didn't feel like I had much with him lying and yelling and speaking over, as we heard earlier, with how they interrupt. Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah.
That was interesting. That seems to be a universal thing. So anyway, that was fascinating. Andrew's book. I'm looking forward to listening to it. I have several books kind of queued up. But I'm fortunate to be able to listen to books while I work. Not many people can do that while they work, and because it's kind of two parts of my brain. I've got two. I can listen to books and still work because they're not the same thing exactly. Although books inform, they go into my ears and they come out my fingertips. So if I'm listening to her or working on a bust of Grant or Darwin or Franklin or whoever I'm working on, it helps. It helps me it becomes part of the work. The words I turn them into form. So I don't want to bore people, but that's.
Well, you touched on something. There is a sentiment that in times of great political upheaval and unrest comes great art, and you just really encapsulated how and why that happens, because you feel so frustrated and maybe powerless to do anything. So what are you going to do? You're going to make something new, brand new, to express your feelings about what's going on. You may not be able to change what is upsetting you directly, but you can affect how you feel about it and your response to it. So I applaud your creativity in these times.
You're right. There's the people that say Switzerland didn't create that much because they had a lot of peace and they were neutral. But it's true. I think the challenges to character and develop people. You see, Lincoln wouldn't have been Lincoln without the challenges he had of the Civil War, and FDR would not have been who he was without because he was kind of a dandy, without the polio that challenged him, and then and gave him empathy, and the economy with the Depression, and then the war. And it does seem to be the time that people, if they can, they rise up to meet challenges, and this is a time. This is one of those challenging times, isn't it? We hopefully will. It seems like much of the country now is coming together, not just Democrats, Republicans against Trump, and so on. And it's hopefully, we will keep our democracy and a kind of secular government, as much as we have, and enhance it.
There's another very nice person, a very influential person on the Zoom link today,
Yes.
Stephen Hurdle from the Freedom from Religion Foundation. I'd love to get to have you spotlighted and tell us a little bit about what you're doing with the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
Oh, thank you for introducing me, and I've really enjoyed this. I've been to a couple of your meetups, and I'm looking forward to the one next week, very much so, but I've enjoyed the other ones as well, and great speakers, great talks. And yesterday we just had an all-day board meeting. I'm the president of the board of FFRF. And so we've been planning what to do and how to move forward and in this difficult time. And the organization is doing great. We have the highest number, about 33,000 members, 33,000 members plus, which is the most we've ever had. And I think in some ways with COVID-19, people aren't doing other things. And so they enjoy getting the newsletter, they enjoy finding out what's going on. And so before you were out doing other things, you're playing sports, you're involved in a gardening club, and all of those things have kind of gone away. So
well, Stephen, I noticed that as I was organizing events in California, a lot of people were out enjoying the weather, enjoying, their sports and their activities. And so it was very hard to get a volunteer team together in California.
Yeah.
I think because of that, because the weather is so beautiful.
There's other things to do.
Yeah. So when winter comes, I'm always pushing extra hard for people to join the Freethought Society committees and to be more involved in separation of religion and government, and to really explore this position they have as non-theists in the United States. I would love to, speaking about being creative, like Zenos was talking about, I'm looking for journey stories. I want to know what it was for a person, how it happened for a person to go from being a believer to a non-believer. What was the journey that someone took to go from what their parents wanted for them to believe to people who were rational and free thinking? That's the kind of interesting story that we're searching for our publication, as well as to be posted on our website. And I'd like to make a call out to anyone who's listening that we love journey stories. We have 6 professional proofreaders. So you can just write emotionally, write whatever you want, talk about your journey, submit it to us, and we will perfect it. We will give you a beautiful story at the end. Of course, we're going to check with you to make sure our corrections are agreeable. But it's a wonderful way to outreach to the believers about how we made our journey, how we progressed and made our conclusion. And I think it's very helpful for acceptance and tolerance from the Christian community to read these stories.
Interesting. And I know in my own case, I've been an atheist since I knew the word, 10 years old, and never kind of looked back. So there's not much of a journey that I took in that case. But
what did you read, and what did you how did you learn about the non-theist community? Those are the things we want to impart.
Okay.
Yeah. And how did you keep from getting sucked into all that craziness?
Yeah, hard to say. I guess I had good friends. So, yeah.
Well, I'm having a hard time not believing in ESP, because almost every event I get dressed, I have no conversations with Michael Stephen Martin, who is a co-host. And sure enough, we are wearing coordinating colors every single time. It is the craziest thing. Look, Michael, spotlight yourself.
I think I am.
We can see you.
I think we're sharing. Yeah. And even our speaker today, Andrew had a blue shirt on, very similar to mine, but he had long sleeves, but it was blue with the polka dots. Yeah. Must be a theme.
Yeah.
Do we just have the blues right now? Is that what it's about?
Or you're subtly telling everyone you're not a Republican, you're a Democrat.
Oh, that's good. Yes.
It's subliminal. It's subliminal.
It's not just the blue wave. It is a blue tsunami. You watch.
That's right. That's right.
Las Vegas, you can bet on anything. I would love to place a bet for Biden. I am so excited about him. I'm so happy about his vice president choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's doing a wonderful job.
Right. And I didn't mention I'm in Pittsburgh. And so you and I are all hoping that Pennsylvania does the right thing. After 4 years ago, we did the wrong thing in Pennsylvania.
A big oops from me.
Yes.
The Freethought Society is a 501c3.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to get political. I don't know, something about the color.
I
blue.
didn't mention any names. I just mentioned colors.
Okay. Now, who else can we hear from?
Who else is here? Oh, Louis says in Denmark, the blue color is actually the right and the red color is the left. Wow, that's going to get confusing.
Well, I do plan to wear red for the secular Day of the Dead. So, so let's hear from Bradley or Bill or
Who's in here?
Sanjay.
Yeah, and I think everyone's muted. So if you want to jump in, please make sure to unmute yourself and start your camera if you'd like to be seen.
Bruce Costa, what is that symbol all about?
Oh my, I'm getting flagged. Hi, everybody. That is the, I own a karate school, and that is the logo for our karate school that is emblematic of the International Shotokan Karate Federation, which traces its lineage to Koshi, who was, his poet name was Shoto, and that that tiger was drawn by one of his students, and one of my students surrounded it with all that. And our name is Granite Forest Dojo, and so Granite Forest and all that. A proper secular dojo, I'll have you know.
And what belt do you have?
I am a 5th degree black belt. Hey, listen, that and $5 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
Actually, I want to travel with you.
Oh, I would love to travel with you.
You can protect me.
Oh,
hey, yeah, it'll get you to the front of the line at Starbucks, that's for sure. Out of my way.
Well, I have 2 answers to that. The problem with your theory is the world is far too peaceful to require my protection, in spite of all the news we read. And, you know, I just love to travel. So, you know, I was hanging on your every word about the place you had in Hawaii. I'm bummed to know that you got rid of it.
Actually, I am the recipient of some horrible death threats and threats to my safety. I've had actual very, very scary incidences in this very office.
Yeah.
Where someone posed as a volunteer and threatened my life. So, you know, I should travel with a personal guard.
I'm in. I'm in. Although the third point I would make is that, you know, no matter how many ranks I get, it's not a magic bullet. It's always ugly. Everybody always gets hurt. It's, you know, we get words and we get violence, right? The more we get, the better you get at violence, the better you need to get at words. So
I would agree with that.
yeah.
And
hey, Bruce.
Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry, Bruce. Have you happened to see the movie? I think it's called The Art of Self-Defense. Jesse Eisenberg. Did you see that?
Of course, I saw that.
What are your thoughts?
Oh, listen, none of my students are on this call, I hope. Yeah. It was a bloody masterpiece, and I do mean exactly that.
It blew my mind. I wasn't expecting a movie like that, and I walked out of there like, you don't see movies like that very often. That was well done and entertaining like crazy.
Super clever. I love it.
Yeah.
Not representative of anything we're doing.
No. That's a whole different reality there. Yeah, it looks like the real world, but it's not. Yeah, it's crazy.
It was really cool. I adored it. Really brilliant. So it's impossible to talk about it without giving away spoilers, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't want to say too much other than go see it. Yeah, it's
boring
role.
Everyone else in the conversation.
He always plays such meek and mild mannered, kind of quiet guys, and he plays a real quote unquote badass in this one. So,
oh my god, yeah, it was great. It was great. Well done.
That sounds cool. I've never even heard of that movie. Do you remember like circa what year it came out?
Oh, was like this year, wasn't it this year, Michael?
Oh, it's recent.
I think it was 2019.
Okay. Yeah.
Huh.
I just
The
watched
art of
it
self-defense.
Let
I
me do a
just watched
quick
it 2
check.
or 3 weeks ago. My son, you know, showed up, visited from San Francisco, and he's like, "Dad, what are you doing?" You know, sit down.
Your son.
He's a software engineer in as is the law to live in San Francisco, and he's 28 somehow, impossibly.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. There it is. The
So
art
he
of
was-
self-defense.
He was raised with I actually have a degree in film, so with which you too can operate a karate school, and so he was raised with a very particular sense of film, and so, you know, when he tells me I need to see something, I snap too.
How about motorcycles? Do you have a motorcycle? They feature prominently in there.
I do have a motorcycle. In fact, I have exactly the kind of motor. I have a Suzuki DRZ, exactly the kind.
That's what they mean when they say the plot thickens. Okay, is that art imitating life? Wow.
Thank you for the attention, but I smile way too much to carry his demeanor.
Does anybody else have any good movie recommendations they've found during quarantine? Any
You know, Michael, if I may, what I've been doing,
Yes.
what I've been finally doing that I promised myself I'd do a million years ago, is I took all the best screenplay winners from the Academy, and I've been trying to get through them. Like, you know, so in other words, in an effort to utterly ignore what Hollywood tells us to do, you know, I mean, there are, you know, outside of COVID, there are how many movies are you aware of every month? A dozen, you know. If you have a 16-plex near you, there's 8 of the screens are taken up by 2 movies, right? So there are about 4,500 films per month that are produced in America, just in America. 4,500 English language movies, and we're told we have to see one of these 4, you know, or we're just not. So the capacity to get away from that machinery is really important for your brain.
I read a statistic recently that said something like every minute, 2 days worth of content gets uploaded on YouTube. So it's just like there is so much content out there to access for whatever reason. There's no way to sift through it all, but it's
Oh my God. So, okay. So full disclosure, my son actually works for Google and is a programmer at YouTube. And so we talk about that platform all the time. I'm particularly interested in the echo chambers that it's creating. And, you know, I'm sure all the topics many on this forum are eloquent about. And so, but, you know, I can get in on his family plan for YouTube TV. I'm just learning about this now, wherein it is basically a cable subscription, and I'm off of cable. I only have internet in my house. So he's like, you know, it's a cable subscription that follows you anywhere in the world on all of your devices, and comes with basically a TiVo that will record anything you want, as much as you want, unlimited, like, you know, petabytes of material if you want it. And so for the last 2 nights, I've been losing my nights looking at this drivel, and I'm about to tell my son, no thanks. Like, we're better off disengaging from this nonsense. I just don't see the, you know.
Well, actually, television and all of that free access stuff is pablum for society to not address the real issues that are facing us. That's what I
We have a lot of distractions. We have a lot of things looking for our attention and trying to entertain us so that we don't pay attention to the big things.
That's right.
It's really a rough time regarding our minds, the acquisition of them by agents outside of our own selves. And I'm now I've literally written an essay that I'm about to put on Facebook. I have over 3,000 friends on Facebook, and I have these long, like, just, it'll take your night to, I'll post the most provocative possible thing I can on Facebook, that seeks to send an arrow down the center of the war, So I'll challenge my friends on the left, or I'll challenge my friends on the right in some ideology that they're right in the middle of, And so
wait a minute. You're a writer?
I am.
Hey, I need you.
Oh no.
Submissions for the Freethought Society e-zine. I'm always looking for great content. Now, I can't get political because we're a 501c3, but if you have a great article to submit to us, we need it. I struggle. We publish 4 times a year, and I'm always struggling to get the last couple of pages done.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Consider submitting to us.
I Margaret, you are ever on topic. You know what?
I'm notorious.
I love it. It's why we all love you so much.
Margaret, the Pittsburgh Freethought Society, we have a big campaign for the election, and we have vote for science and reason. We don't mention any candidate. We just say science and reason. You'll have to match the candidates. Yeah, it's working. Hopefully it's working. Again, we're 501c3, so we have to follow the same rules. No names are mentioned.
That's good.
So what are the rules that you're not allowed to, like, in what way are you prohibited from having a political conversation by being a 501c3? I don't understand that.
It's very, very difficult. 25% of your activities cannot be political. So we must vary our content, and I try to avoid any type of proselytization because the Johnson Act needs to be respected by not only my 501c3, but also the churches as well as other 501c3s when it comes to advocating for a party or a candidate.
And what is the Johnson Act?
The Johnson Act prohibits churches and 501c3 organizations from proselytizing as well as, well, actually, it's not proselytizing, forgive me. It's for advocating a political candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's a very fine line. So when you talk about the blue wave, you're not advocating a candidate. So we just have to be very careful that 25% is not the line that we cross in our publication, in our discussions, in our advocacy. So in order to stay within that 25%, I really, really guard my language and what we put in print.
So you had said before 25% can't be political. What you meant was 25% can be, 75% can't be, correct?
Oh, no.
The other way around.
I'm sorry. I guess it was the opposite. 75%.
Can't.
Cannot.
Cannot be political. Okay, so, but would it be political?
25% of our dialogue, we cannot reach that threshold with an advocacy of a political stance.
An advocacy for a political candidate.
Right.
But can you be critical of a sitting politician, and that's not, you know, breaching the definition of political?
And you hit that fine line.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so scary,
mm-hmm.
and so so much of an issue that I try to never, ever, ever mention a candidate, even though we have scientists who are now candidates locally. And I really am reluctant to mention names, and, you know, I just don't want to be a problem where we're always griping about religions being a problem and the line that they cross. So it is difficult.
So Margaret, just occupy 60 more seconds of everybody's patience here. My kind of bailiwick is is that we all need to keep talking to each other. And I have many friends, most of whom are on the left, who are just, these people are scumbags. They're advocating this, you know, dispersals of families and, you know, what all the horrors that we're seeing, you know, and are using that as saying, I'm just unfriending people on social media. I'm not talking to my parents anymore. I'm, you know, so forth and so on. And I am calling them unpatriotic. And I'm reminding them that, you know, 40% of Washington's troops didn't have boots in the winter at Valley Forge. And what's your complaint? That this is hard? Is that your complaint? You know, and so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to point out that regardless of how horrifying your opponent's position is, and I say the same thing to my friends on the right, you know, regardless of how unacceptable you find your opponent's position, they have their vote carries the same weight that yours does. Our founding fathers left us with one option, and that is to talk to people with whom we disagree. And, you know, what's your plan? And I've actually gotten them to finally, you know, at the end of the discussion is when they don't say, yeah, you know, all right, I won't be so stuck in my ideology. No, what they'll say is, well, America's shot anyway. And these are people on the left. And I'm saying that is exactly the logic that my parents used when they voted for Donald Orange Trump, you know? And so, like, you know, it blows my mind that, and so I'm just trying to be this healing force. And I don't know if I breach, I'm pretty sure I steer very clear of your definition of the Johnson Act. So
I don't know if your mention of Donald Trump threw us over the 25%.
Right, well, it's easy to not mention it. Really, I don't need to mention it to make the point.
Yeah,
I really don't. It's their words that I take advantage of. I'm just trying to use Aikido and let them use their own momentum, you know.
For instance, on my personal Facebook page, I poke fun at Donald Trump constantly. I have posts about the hypocrisy and how horrible this administration has treated.
What choice do you really have?
Yeah. But I don't put it on the Freethought Society Facebook page. I don't share that. But I do, you know, I share events and I share interesting meetings that we have and links and so forth. So there's a fine line where I know that involving the Freethought Society is different than my personal belief.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
Well, I guess what I'm pushing on here is that free thinking is exactly what's not happening as social media divides creates a greater chasm between all of two ideologies that seem to be represented in this country right now. And that is exactly the tool that I'm using to challenge thoughtful. It is possible to be a thoughtful conservative. I know many. And it is possible to be a thoughtful capital L liberal. And I know many. And so all I'm doing is holding them to that the wisdom of being an interlocutor, of being able to represent your opponent's point of view. That's a vital skill for a free society. So, the defenestration of the media is the worst possible thing that could happen, right? So,
agreed. Absolutely agreed. And I thank you so much for being here.
sorry to take up so much air.
Hey, Bruce, you're cool, man. I think you need your own show too.
How about if you interview him for your podcast?
I like it. Yeah.
I'd be honored.
Movies, motorcycles, all that. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Hey, Margaret.
Oahu. I'm utterly with you, dude. Can we break code and do it in person outside distance?
Oh yeah, I got a super huge budget. I'll fly you in.
I'm so there. I've been to Oahu. I concur with your opinion, and damn,
Adrian, do you know King Zor, the podcast in Kauai?
King's what?
King Zor, Z-O-R.
King Zor. Oh, I do not know.
Oh, I've been on his show many times. He's fantastic.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And he's on Kauai?
Yeah,
Is the show called King's? Is the show, that's what the show's called?
I can't remember the name of his show. But do you know Michelle Rudgren?
Mm.
And Todd Rundgren?
Oh, Todd, yes, yeah. A little bit. I know the names.
Are secularists. You need to contact them. Let me send you their information.
Please, sure, yeah.
On your podcast.
Oh, cool.
I would love to hear from Bradley. If Bradley is here. Well, I don't know. Bradley seems to be listening. Okay.
While we wait for Bradley, can I say the name of my podcast is called The Intelligently Resigned Show, and religion is a common topic where I've even had like born again Christians on to kind of debate. And then I went to, when the Book of Mormon was out here, the musical was out here, I was happy to learn that after every presentation, there would be actual Mormons outside of the theater handing out the actual Book of Mormon, as kind of their retort to it. And it was, in good spirit and stuff. And I had been trying to have on a Mormon missionary on my show for years and, to no avail. And so I was so happy when I found out that they were there, because now I knew exactly where they would be every night for the next 2 weeks, So I went back 3 separate times and I would get there before they got there. And then they would be there about 15 minutes before the show let out. And so I was able to interview actual Mormons for the show. And I put a couple links on the chat thread here for those episodes. But if you look up the Intelligently Resigned, they come up. So that's been fun. Sorry, I just wanted to plug that.
And actually, I do know the developers of the Book of Mormon. And did you know that they have a house in Kauai?
Oh, you're muted, Adrian. There you go.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was so happy that it came out to Oahu. It was great. It was so funny.
Good.
It was amazing.
Hey, Margaret, can I ask you? Sorry.
I was just saying, yeah, it is a great show. I saw it at the Pantages Theater, and I saw it at the Segerstrom Center as well. Yeah.
Nice.
That's a great.
Margaret, in regards to the your tax status and how you're saying, the percentage that can be political, is it not within what you're allowed to do if you speak something specifically to this candidate did, or if this candidate did this, or this person in office did something that we don't like in regards to the church-state separation issue? Are you able to be kind of specific into a specific policy that the Freethought Society disagrees with?
We would have to balance that. We would have to say, this person is anti-science, this person is. And, there's this balancing game taking place only because we fill out every year a 990 report about what we do and who we advocate and every presentation that we do on Zoom is reported. The churches don't have to do anything in regards to that. The churches can say, oh, we are a 501c3. They don't have to fill out a 990. And our 990 takes us months to fill out. It takes an accounting, it takes a form to fill out. And the churches don't have to do this. This is what Andrew was talking about. The churches are not required to talk about to the IRS that X number of dollars went to public service, went to meetings, went to educational programs. We are required to do that. But the 990 for religious organizations does not require it. And it is so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Oh, that's a trip. Yeah. Yeah, because then the churches have a thing, please correct me if I'm wrong, where their money, where it's any specific money that they spend in kind of a community outreach thing is separate than from the money that they do for their church stuff, right? So they have
So, and this is why we are encumbered by the many, the churches, the mega churches that have leaders who have jets and beautiful estates. And they're not reporting that as part of the money that they're getting from their parishioners. And this has to stop. We need to force them to report all the income and where it's going. It's not going to homeless shelters. It's not going to people in need. It's not going to hospitals. This is why we must demand that they have a 990 report, just like I have to have a 990 report.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how much they're able to put, the jet is part of the ministry because they're flying to another place.
Right. Right.
It's so ridiculous.
I wish I had a jet.
Imagine also if their books were opened and you would see also the amount of money, the efficiency of a dollar spent when you give to a charity, where you wonder how much of your dollar goes to the administration of the distribution of whatever services, and how you want that margin to be optimal, imagine if you were to open up some of these books, the terrible margins that you would see on how much goes towards administration and how much goes towards actually community good, and this is all obvious, speculation on my part, but I would just love to see that,
Yeah, imagine no religion. It's easy if you try. But imagine if I needed to justify any trips that I made. And well, I do actually, because of that 990 filing. I list every expense, everything related to running the Freethought Society. So why doesn't the church have to do that? Why doesn't the church have to justify the money that they get in and the money that they delve out?
Yeah, it's absurd.
The eternal question.
So, Michael, I'm going to have to leave soon, but
Okay. I think we're hitting our 3-hour mark here pretty soon, so maybe it's a good time to wind down.
okay.
Yeah, aloha, everyone. I'll say goodbye. Thank you so much, all you got for everything you guys do. It's so awesome following. I'm so glad I got to see just Andrew's tweet about this going on, and this was just a fun little impromptu thing. It was so nice to virtually meet all of you, and aloha from Hawaii, and keep up the good fight.
Yes. Everybody be safe. Thank you for coming. Good to see you
Michael,
all.
Margaret, I've been lurking, but thank you very much for the show.
Hey, thank you, Bill. Good to see you.
Thank you
Everybody
very
have a great
much
weekend.
for having me, and good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Yes, thanks for coming, Louise. Thank you all.
Cheers,
Bruce, Bradley,
everybody.
Margaret, Zenos, everybody, AJ, everybody, Bill, Louise. Good
Bye.
night. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.